20 years ago, I stood in the snow on Christmas Eve as my mother slammed the door in my face. I was 17 years old, accused of a crime I didn't commit and cast out like garbage. My father, the man who taught me to ride a bike, couldn't even look at me. That night, I became invisible to the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. But here's the thing about being invisible, it gives you the freedom to become anything you want. So I built an empire, $50 million, a real estate company that Forbes called unstoppable. I became the woman they said I'd never be, powerful, successful, untouchable. And for 20 years, my family had no idea I even existed, until they saw me on TV. Suddenly, after 2 decades of silence, an invitation appeared. Come home for Christmas. Let's reconcile. They didn't want their daughter back. They wanted my bank account. So I did something they never expected. I accepted the invitation. I walked back into that house where I was erased, smiled for their cameras, and sat down at their table. They thought I was coming to forgive them. They thought I'd write them a check and play the grateful daughter. They had no idea what I'd discovered. Because while they were planning their perfect Christmas reunion, I was uncovering secrets that would destroy them, secrets about forged documents, stolen identities, and a little girl with my eyes who shouldn't exist. What I said at that Christmas dinner didn't just shock my family, it shattered them. And by the time I was done, the whole world was watching. This is the story of how I went from the daughter they threw away to the woman who took everything back. Stay with me. You won't believe what happens next. My name is Jillian Scott. I'm 37 years old, the CEO of Aurora Estates, a real estate empire worth $50 million, and for the last 20 years, I've been a ghost to the people who should have loved me most. This is the story of how I became invisible and how I came back to haunt them. The snow started falling around 6 o'clock on Christmas Eve 2005. I remember because I checked my watch obsessively, hoping my shift at Miller's Diner would end early so I could get home in time to help Mom with the cookies. I was 17 years old, a straight-A student with a full scholarship to Portland State waiting for me in the fall, and I believed with the naive certainty of youth that hard work and honesty would always be rewarded. I was wrong. When I walked through the front door of our Victorian house in Ashford, Oregon, shaking snow from my coat, I found my mother standing in the hallway with an expression I'd never seen before, cold, administrative, final. My father sat on the stairs behind her, his head in his hands. My younger sister Samantha stood in the doorway to the kitchen, arms crossed, face unreadable. "Where is it, Jillian?" my mother asked, her voice like ice cracking. I didn't understand the question. "Where's what?" "The money. The $12,000 from the college fund. Samantha's tuition money that disappeared from our account last week." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "What are you talking about? I don't know anything about—" "Don't lie to me." My mother's voice cracked through the house like a whip. She thrust a bank statement at me, her hand shaking with rage. "The withdrawal was made from a branch near your work. The signature looks like yours. The account access codes were saved on your laptop." I stared at the paper, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. Yes, the signature looked similar to mine, but I hadn't written it. Yes, I banked at that branch, but I'd been working double shifts all week. I had time cards coworkers who could verify receipts showing I was at the diner when that withdrawal was made. "Mom, I swear to God I didn't take that money. I've been working overtime to save for textbooks. I would never—" "We found cash hidden in your room," Samantha said quietly from the doorway. $2,000 in an envelope under your mattress." My heart stopped. I did have cash in my room, tips I'd been saving for months, money I'd been setting aside to help with expenses at college. I'd shown it to my father just last week, proud of how hard I'd worked for it. "That's from my job." I turned to my father desperately. "Dad, you know that. I showed you. Remember, you said you were proud of me for saving." But my father wouldn't look at me. He sat on those stairs silent as stone while my mother delivered her verdict. "I called the bank," she said. "They confirmed the withdrawal. The security footage shows someone wearing your jacket, your height, your build. And now you have $2,000 you can't adequately explain. I can explain it. I earned that money. I have pay stubs. I have... Enough. My mother's voice dropped to a whisper, which was somehow worse than shouting. I won't have a thief in this house. Not with Samantha's future at stake. Pack your things and leave. The words didn't make sense. This was my home. These were my parents. I was their daughter, the one who got perfect grades, who worked 2 jobs to help with family expenses, who'd never even gotten a detention. Mom, please, just listen to me. Let me show you the time cards. Let me prove. Get out. I turned to my father, the man who taught me to ride a bike, who came to every school play, who called me his little warrior when I was small. Dad, please. You know me. You know I wouldn't do this. He finally looked up, and what I saw in his eyes broke something inside me that has never fully healed. It wasn't anger. It was emptiness. He'd already decided I was guilty, and whatever I said wouldn't change his mind. Robert, my mother said sharply, go upstairs and make sure she only takes what's hers. My father stood slowly like an old man and walked past me without a word. I followed him up to my childhood bedroom, the yellow walls I'd picked out when I was 12, the bookshelf full of trophies and ribbons, the desk where I'd written the valedictorian speech I was supposed to give in June. I threw clothes into a suitcase, hands shaking so badly I could barely work the zipper. My father stood in the doorway, silent as a ghost. I wanted him to say something, anything. Tell me he believed me. Tell me we'd figure this out. Tell me he loved me. He said nothing. 20 minutes later, I stood on the front porch with everything I owned crammed into 2 suitcases and a backpack. Snow fell softly around me, the kind of picturesque Christmas Eve snow that belonged in movies, not nightmares. Through the window, I could see my family's Christmas tree covered in ornaments I'd helped hang just 3 days ago. My mother stood in the doorway, backlit by the warm glow of the house. A thief has no place in this family, she said, and closed the door. The porch light went out. I stood there in the dark, 17 years old, with nowhere to go and no one to call. The girl I'd been, the one who believed in justice and fairness and the fundamental goodness of family, died in that moment. Something else took her place. Something harder. Something that would spend the next 20 years proving that she didn't need them, didn't need anyone, didn't need love to survive. I picked up my suitcases and walked into the snow. 20 years later, I'm sitting in my glass-walled penthouse office on the 42nd floor of a Seattle high-rise looking out over a city I conquered through sheer force of will. Aurora Estates is worth $50 million. Forbes called me the silent storm, ruthless, elegant, untouchable. My office is immaculate, all clean lines and expensive minimalism. No family photos clutter my desk. No Christmas decorations soften the edges. No attachments, no weaknesses, no vulnerabilities. The only piece of my past I've kept is a single Christmas card, faded and worn, tucked in my desk drawer. It's from 2004, the last Christmas before everything fell apart. On the front, a snow-covered Victorian house that looks just like the one I grew up in. Inside, in my father's careful handwriting, to our Jillian, the light of our lives, love always, Dad. I take it out sometimes when I'm alone and try to remember what it felt like to be loved. My assistant Marcus knocks on the glass door, tablet in hand. He's been with me for 8 years, the closest thing I have to a friend, though I'd never say that out loud. You need to see this, he says, his expression careful. I take the tablet. There's an email on the screen sender, unknown subject line, they saw you on TV. My hands go cold. The message is brief. Your parents watched your interview on Good Morning America. Your mother wants to invite you home for Christmas. The whole family will be there. Please consider reconciliation. It's been 20 years. I stare at the words until they blur. Last week I did a segment on Good Morning America about female entrepreneurs in real estate. They mentioned Aurora Estates' valuation showed footage of my properties, called me an inspiration. The interview has been viewed 3 million times. Of course they saw it. Of course they reached out. 20 years of silence, and the moment they see my net worth on national television, suddenly they want reconciliation. My finger hovers over the delete button. I press it. The email vanishes. Marcus is watching me carefully. "You okay?" "Fine," I say, handing back the tablet. "Just spam." But 30 seconds after he leaves, I retrieve the email from trash and read it again. And again. And again. That night I dream of snow falling on an empty house, of standing on a dark porch with suitcases in hand, of a door closing and a light going out. I wake at 3 in the morning, heart pounding, and find myself standing at my apartment door in my pajamas. There's something on the floor. A cream-colored envelope, expensive stationery, slipped under my door while I slept. My hands shake as I open it. The handwriting is my mother's, still elegant after all these years, the same script that used to write my name on birthday cards. "Come home, Jillian. Let us make it right. Mom." I stand there in the dark hallway of my luxury building, holding a letter from a woman who threw me into the snow 20 years ago, and I feel that 17-year-old girl stirring inside me, the one I thought I'd buried, the one who still, despite everything, wants to know why. Why wasn't I enough? Why didn't they believe me? Why, after 20 years of silence, do they suddenly want me back? I look at the letter in my hand, and for the first time in 2 decades, I let myself wonder, what if I went home? I don't sleep after finding that letter. Instead, I sit at my floor-to-ceiling windows watching Seattle's lights blur into dawn, turning the envelope over and over in my hands. By the time my alarm goes off at 5 o'clock sharp, I've read those 9 words at least 100 times, searching for hidden meanings in my mother's elegant script. My morning routine is sacred, unchanged for the past decade. It's the scaffolding that holds my life together, the proof that I'm in control even when everything else feels like chaos. I brew a single cup of black coffee using beans I have shipped from a small roaster in Portland, not the Portland near my childhood home, but Portland, Maine, as far from Oregon as I could get without leaving the country. While the coffee brews, I scan the financial news on 3 monitors, absorbing market movements, interest rate changes, economic indicators that will affect my acquisition targets. By 5:30, I'm reviewing property portfolios that my team won't even see until their 9 o'clock meeting, a strip mall in Tacoma that's undervalued by 40%. An office building in downtown Seattle with structural issues the owners are desperate to hide. A residential development in Bellevue where the developer is 3 months from bankruptcy. I see opportunities where others see risk diamonds buried in mud. That's what happens when you spend your formative years learning that safety is an illusion. You stop being afraid of taking calculated gambles. My penthouse is 1,600 square feet of deliberate minimalism. White walls, gray furniture, chrome fixtures that reflect light without warmth. A designer from Architectural Digest once called it breathtakingly austere, which I took as a compliment. There are no family photos on the mantle, no sentimental clutter on the shelves, no evidence that anyone actually lives here, rather than just existing between business deals. The only personal item visible is a single shelf in my office holding the awards I've accumulated over the years. Real Estate Executive of the Year Forbes. 30 under 30. Pacific Northwest Business Leader Award. Trophies that prove my worth in ways that don't require love or acceptance. Marcus arrives at 7:15 exactly as scheduled, carrying my dry cleaning and a folder with today's agenda. He's 42, impeccably organized, and the only person in my life who knows where I came from. I hired him 8 years ago when he was working as a property manager for one of my first acquisitions, and he's been the closest thing I have to a friend ever since, though I've never used that word to his face. "Big day," he says, hanging the dry cleaning in my closet. "The Mercer Island closing is at 10 and the PBS interview is at 2. They want to film in your office, get shots of the city skyline behind you. Very woman on top of the world aesthetic." I nod, still staring at my computer screen, but my mind is elsewhere. Marcus sets down his folder and looks at me carefully. "You're holding the Christmas card again," he observes. I glance down and realize he's right. The faded card from 2004 is sitting on my desk, creased from decades of handling. I must have pulled it from the drawer without thinking. Just reminiscing, I say, sliding it back into the desk. About a family that threw you out in the snow. Marcus raises an eyebrow. That's not reminiscing, Jill. That's self-harm. I don't answer, and he knows better than to push. Instead, he walks me through the day's schedule. $12 million property closing, conference call with investors, the PBS documentary interview that's supposed to cement my reputation as a self-made success story, dinner with potential partners who want to expand into the California market. The PBS interview happens in my office just after lunch. The host is a woman in her 50s named Diane Chen, warm and professional, with the kind of probing questions that feel gentle until you realize she's dismantling your defenses piece by piece. We talk about Aurora Estates, about my acquisition strategy, about being a woman in a male-dominated industry. She asks about my education, and I tell her about working my way through community college, then state school, taking real estate courses at night while working as a property manager during the day. I don't mention that I was 17 and homeless when I started sleeping in my car between shifts. Then she asks the question I've been dreading. You've built an incredible empire, but you never mention family. Who inspired you? Who supported you along the way? I've practiced this answer for years, refined it until it sounds both honest and impenetrable. I built this company because I learned early that the only person you can rely on is yourself. That lesson was difficult, but it made me stronger. Independence isn't just about financial success, it's about knowing you can survive anything because you've already survived the worst. Diane nods sympathetically, and I can see her mentally filing this away as the overcoming adversity angle. The segment will air next week as part of their Women Who Built Empires series. They'll edit it to make me look inspirational, maybe add some soaring music over shots of my skyline view. What I don't know is that in a Victorian house in Ashford, Oregon, my mother is watching this interview live on the PBS website, surrounded by stacks of past due notices and foreclosure warnings. I don't know that when Diane mentions Aurora Estates is valued at $50 million, my mother's expression shifts from shock to something calculating and cold. I don't know that within hours of the broadcast ending, she'll draft that letter in her elegant handwriting, hands shaking not with remorse, but with desperate opportunity. All I know is that when I get home that evening, I find Marcus waiting in my living room with an expression I've never seen before, something between concern and anger. "We need to talk," he says. I set down my briefcase. "About what?" "About the $5,000 you transfer every month to the Scott Family Hope Foundation." My blood runs cold. "How did you find out about that?" "I'm your assistant, Jill. I process your financial statements. I've known for years, I just didn't say anything because I figured you had your reasons." He pulls up a website on his tablet. "But I started looking into it today. Do you know what this foundation actually does?" I don't answer. The truth is, I've never looked too closely. I just needed to know they were okay, that the house wasn't foreclosed, that they had enough to survive. Some wounded part of me still needed them to exist, even if I couldn't be part of their existence. "It's your mother's vanity project," Marcus continues. "She hosts charity events, gives speeches about community values, uses it to maintain her social standing. And you've been funding it. Anonymously, sure, but still." "I'm not supporting them." I say the words sounding hollow even to my own ears. "I'm just making sure they survive." "Why?" Marcus demands. "After what they did to you, you don't owe them anything." I turn to the windows looking out at the city I conquered. "I've been monitoring them for years," I admit. I know Samantha married Ryan Thompson. Saying his name still hurts even after 2 decades. Ryan, who was going to be my future until my mother's letter found him somehow, and he stopped returning my calls. I know my father had a stroke 3 years ago. I know the estate is drowning in debt. "And you care because—" "I don't know," I whisper. Maybe because hating them takes too much energy. Maybe because some small, stupid part of me still wants to believe they're worth saving. Marcus is quiet for a long moment. Then he hands me his phone. "You need to see this." On the screen is a live broadcast from a local Oregon news station. My mother stands in front of our family home, the Victorian house I was exiled from, now covered in elaborate Christmas decorations. She's wearing pearls and a cashmere sweater, her hair perfectly styled, her smile practiced and warm for the cameras. "This Christmas," she's saying, "we're hosting a family reunion gala to save our historic estate. All are welcome, especially those we've lost. It's time to heal old wounds and come together as a community." The reporter asks if she's referring to anyone specific. My mother's smile doesn't waver. Every family has complicated histories. This Christmas, we're choosing forgiveness and reconciliation. We're opening our doors and our hearts. I watch the video 3 times, studying my mother's face, searching for genuine emotion beneath the performance. But all I see is calculation. The timing is too perfect. The PBS interview aired this morning. By this evening, she's on local news talking about reconciliation and lost family members. She doesn't want me back. She wants my bank account. And suddenly, standing in my immaculate penthouse surrounded by the empire they never believed I could build, I make a decision that will change everything. "Marcus," I say quietly, "book me a flight to Portland. It's time I went home for Christmas." The formal letter arrives by courier the next morning, delivered in a cream-colored envelope with my mother's monogrammed stationery, the same elegant paper she used for thank you notes and birthday cards throughout my childhood. I recognize it instantly, and something twists in my chest before I even break the seal. The handwriting is hers, that perfect cursive she learned at some expensive finishing school in her youth, each letter formed with deliberate care. I sit at my kitchen counter with my untouched coffee growing cold beside me and read the words she's chosen so carefully. "Dearest Jillian, 20 years is too long. Your father speaks your name in his sleep. Samantha asks about you. I was wrong to let you go that night. I was frightened, overwhelmed, and I made a choice I've regretted every day since. This Christmas, please come home. Let us heal as a family. We're hosting a reunion gala on December 23rd. The press will be there, but this invitation is for you, not the CEO. Just my daughter. Please, Mom." I read it 7 times, each reading revealing new layers of carefully constructed emotion. The word "dearest" that she never used when I actually lived under her roof. The claim that my father speaks my name in his sleep, designed to pull at the heartstrings I've spent 20 years trying to deaden. The admission of being frightened and overwhelmed, words that suggest she was a victim of circumstance rather than the architect of my exile. And that final "please," so humble, so vulnerable, so perfectly calculated to make me question my own anger. I search for the manipulation I know must be hidden in these words, the ulterior motive lurking beneath the surface of maternal regret. But she's good at this, always has been. She knows exactly which emotional buttons to push, which memories to invoke, which version of herself to present to get what she wants. The mention of the press being there is particularly interesting. She's framing it as an inconvenient necessity, something separate from her genuine desire to see me, but I know better. The press is the point. This isn't a private family reconciliation, it's a public performance with ticket prices and media coverage. Marcus arrives an hour later and finds me still sitting at the counter, the letter spread in front of me like evidence at a crime scene. He takes one look at my face and goes straight to my wine cabinet, returning with 2 glasses and a bottle of Pinot Noir that's far too expensive for 11 o'clock on a Wednesday morning. "Talk to me," he says, pouring generously. I slide the letter across the counter. He reads it once, then sets it down with the kind of careful neutrality that tells me he's choosing his words precisely. "Forgiveness isn't a gift you give them, Jill," he says finally. "It's a boundary you set for yourself. You need to be clear about what you're actually doing here." "I know what I'm doing." "Do you?" He pulls out his phone and starts scrolling. "Because I've been doing some research since last night. Look at this." He shows me a Facebook event page for the Scott Family Christmas Reunion Gala. The cover photo is a professional shot of my childhood home decorated with thousands of white lights looking like something out of a Hallmark movie. The description talks about healing hope and the power of family, while mentioning that tickets are $500 each, with all proceeds going to save the historic Scott estate from foreclosure. I scroll through the comments. Local business owners promising to attend. Old family friends expressing excitement. Strangers buying tickets to be part of what they're calling the most heartwarming story of the season. My mother has been busy. Marcus swipes to show me more. A local news article about the event featuring an interview with my mother standing on our front porch looking dignified and hopeful. She talks about the importance of preserving historic homes and healing broken family relationships, managing to make it sound like these two things are somehow connected. Then he shows me the timeline he's constructed. The PBS interview aired Monday morning. By Monday evening, my mother was on local news talking about reconciliation. Tuesday, the formal invitation was drafted and sent via courier. Wednesday morning today, the Charity Gala Facebook event goes live with professional photos and a polished marketing strategy. 72 hours, Marcus says. From the moment she saw your net worth mentioned on national television to a full-scale fundraising operation centered around your return. This isn't about reconciliation, Jill. This is about rescue. They're drowning financially and you're the life raft. I take a long drink of wine, letting the truth of his words settle into my bones. Part of me already knew this, has known it since I saw that news clip last night. But hearing it stated so plainly, seeing the evidence laid out in chronological order, makes it impossible to hide behind any romantic notions of genuine maternal regret. So, what are you going to do? Marcus asks. I stand and walk to my living room windows, looking out at the Seattle skyline in the gray November light. 20 years ago, I was a 17-year-old girl standing in the snow with 2 suitcases, wondering if I would survive the night. I slept in my car for 3 months, worked 3 jobs while finishing high school, put myself through community college, 1 class at a time. I built Aurora Estates from nothing, turned myself into someone powerful and untouchable, created an empire that would make them regret every moment they doubted me. And now they want me back. Not because they love me, not because they've had some profound realization about the injustice of what they did, but because they need money and I have it, and they think they can manipulate me into giving it to them. The old Jillian, the girl who believed in fairness and justice, would have ignored this invitation, would have let them drown in their own consequences. But I'm not that girl anymore. I'm a woman who understands that sometimes the most satisfying victory isn't walking away. Sometimes it's walking straight into the trap and turning it inside out. I open my laptop and pull up a first-class ticket to Portland for December 20th. I book it without hesitation, then open a new email to my PR team. I'm going, I tell Marcus without looking away from the screen. But not because I forgive them. Then why? Because they think they're inviting back their desperate daughter who still needs their approval. They're not. They're inviting back a woman who built an empire out of spite, and they have no idea what that means. I begin typing the email to my communications director. Prepare a press release. Jillian Scott returns home for Christmas, full media coverage requested. I want photographers, I want interviews, I want documentation of every moment. Marcus watches me with a mixture of concern and fascination. What exactly are you planning? I smile, and I can feel how cold it is, how different from any expression that 17-year-old girl could have managed. If they want a show, I'll give them one they'll never forget. They're selling tickets to my reconciliation like it's dinner theater. Fine, let's give the audience what they paid for, but the script isn't going to be the one my mother wrote. Jill, if you're doing this for revenge, I'm doing this for closure. I interrupt. There's a difference. They've had 20 years to wonder what happened to me, to tell themselves whatever story makes them feel better about what they did. It's time they learned the truth. It's time they understood exactly what they threw away that night. I hit send on the email, and immediately my phone starts buzzing. My PR director calling to discuss strategy. A notification that someone's tagged me in a social media post. A news alert that makes my stomach drop. I click on it. The headline reads, Local Oregon Families Christmas Gala Goes viral daughter, who built 50 numbers empire, rumored to attend. The story is already out of my control, spreading faster than I anticipated. Someone leaked the rumor, probably my mother herself, turning my return into a media event before I've even confirmed I'm coming. The comments section is exploding with people debating whether I'm a heartless daughter or a justified victim, whether reconciliation is possible after 20 years, whether my family deserves forgiveness or punishment. They're writing my story without knowing any of the real details, turning my life into entertainment, making assumptions about forgiveness and healing that have nothing to do with the complicated truth of what actually happened. I stare at my phone as it continues buzzing with notifications, messages, interview requests. The machine is already in motion, and I'm no longer sure if I'm driving it or if it's driving me. Marcus refills my wine glass. Still think this is a good idea. I look at the news alert at my mother's carefully crafted narrative at the strangers debating my worth in comment sections. Then I think about that girl in the snow and the empire she built and the justice she's owed. Yes, I say, let them talk. By the time I'm done, they'll have a real story to tell. I rent a sleek black Mercedes from the Portland airport, the kind of car that makes a statement without saying a word. As I merge onto Highway 26 heading east toward Ashford, my hands grip the steering wheel with a tension I can't quite release. This route is burned into my memory, every curve, every landmark, every mile marker that counted down the distance between my college dreams and the reality of home. Except home isn't home anymore. It hasn't been for 20 years. The first thing I pass is Miller's Diner, where I worked double shifts at 16, saving money for a future I thought was guaranteed. The building looks smaller now, the neon sign flickering with missing letters. I remember standing in that parking lot on Christmas Eve 2005, still wearing my uniform, smelling like coffee and French fries, checking my phone obsessively for a message from my mother saying it was all a mistake, that I could come back inside. That message never came. 10 miles later, I drive past Ashford High School, where I was valedictorian of my class, where my locker was decorated with acceptance letters from colleges I'd never attend because I was too busy surviving to think about thriving. The building looks exactly the same, frozen in time, while I've become someone completely unrecognizable to the girl who walked those halls. Then there's Riverside Park, where Ryan Thompson kissed me for the first time under the maple trees when we were 15. I slow down without meaning to, catching a glimpse of those same trees through the winter bare branches, and feel the ghost of that kiss, like a wound that never properly healed. I wonder if he still lives here, if he married my sister, like the social media stalking suggested, if he ever thinks about the future we planned together before my mother's letters found him and everything fell apart. Ashford itself looks smaller than I remember, shabbier, like a town that's been slowly dying while I was busy being born into someone new. The population sign still reads 8,000, but I'd bet half those people have left and nobody bothered updating the number. Main Street has more empty storefronts than I remember, and the Christmas decorations hanging from the lampposts look tired and faded. Then I see it. The Scott Estate rising at the end of Oak Tree Lane like something out of a Gothic novel, sprawling and Victorian across 5 acres of what used to be immaculately maintained property. I pull up to the circular driveway and just sit there for a moment, engine running, staring at the house that shaped me and then destroyed me. The paint is peeling in long strips from the siding. The garden that my mother once tended with obsessive precision is overgrown with weeds poking through the December frost. The famous oak tree in the front yard where I carved my initials when I was 10 is dead, a gray skeleton of what it once was, branches reaching toward the sky like accusations. But someone has strung the entire house with thousands of white Christmas lights, transforming decay into something that might photograph well. A professional catering truck is parked near the kitchen entrance, and I can see workers in black uniforms moving equipment inside. The show must go on even if the stage is rotting beneath the performers' feet. I turn off the engine and the silence rushes in. This is the moment I've been both dreading and anticipating for 3 days since I booked that ticket, since I decided to walk back into the past with my eyes wide open. Before I can even open my car door, the front door of the house flies open and my mother appears on the porch, arms outstretched, tears already streaming down her perfectly made-up face. "My baby girl," she cries, her voice carrying across the yard with theatrical projection. Margaret Scott is 62 years old now, but she's maintained herself well, still elegant in a cream cashmere sweater set, her hair colored and styled in soft waves, her posture perfect. She looks like money, or at least like someone who used to have it, and is desperately clinging to the appearance. Behind her, I spot a local news crew setting up a camera. Of course, this reunion isn't for me. It's for the audience. I step out of the Mercedes slowly, every movement deliberate and controlled. I'm wearing a charcoal gray suit that cost more than my mother's monthly mortgage payment. My hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, my expression carefully neutral. I look like exactly what I am, a CEO worth $50 million, not a lost daughter crawling home. My mother rushes down the porch steps and pulls me into an embrace that smells exactly like I remember Chanel No. 5. The same perfume she's worn since I was a child. Her arms wrap around me, her body shaking with what might be sobs or might be performance. And I stand there feeling absolutely nothing. "Welcome home, sweetheart," she whispers into my ear, just loud enough for the camera microphone to catch. "We're so proud of you." The words slide over me like oil on water, unable to penetrate the armor I've spent 20 years constructing. I don't return the embrace. I simply stand there letting her perform her maternal devotion for the cameras until she finally steps back and wipes delicately at her eyes. "Come inside," she says, linking her arm through mine as if we've done this 1,000 times. "There's so much to prepare for tomorrow's gala." The house smells different, like catering food and rented furniture and fresh paint trying to cover old decay. Everything is staged for the event the spaces I once knew transformed into a venue for strangers. A string quartet is tuning instruments in what used to be the music room. Hired staff in black and white uniforms arrange elaborate flower displays. Catering stations are being set up in the dining room where we once ate family dinners. I walk through these rooms like a ghost, touring her own haunting, searching for traces of the girl I used to be. My mother chatters about the gala, about how many tickets they've sold, about the menu and the decorations and the local celebrities who've confirmed attendance, but I'm barely listening. Then I see it. In the formal living room, the family photo wall that my mother maintained with religious devotion throughout my childhood. Graduation pictures, vacation snapshots, wedding photos, a visual history of the Scott family presented for anyone who enters this room. But in the large family portrait from 2004, the last Christmas before everything fell apart, there's a girl-shaped hole where I used to be. Someone has physically cut my face out of the photograph, leaving behind only the outline of where I once stood between my parents. My smile erased my existence, edited from the family narrative. My mother follows my gaze and has the grace to look uncomfortable. "We can get that restored," she says lightly, as if my face was accidentally damaged rather than deliberately removed. "There are wonderful digital services now that can fix these kinds of things." I turn to her with a smile that doesn't reach my eyes, that doesn't carry any warmth or forgiveness. "Don't bother," I say quietly. "I'd rather see who you became without me." Her expression flickers just for a second, and I see something beneath the performance. Fear, maybe. Or calculation. She opens her mouth to respond, but before she can speak, a sound drifts down from upstairs that makes my entire body go rigid. A child's laughter. High and bright and innocent, echoing through the halls of this house that holds nothing but ghosts. My blood runs cold as I stare up at the ceiling, trying to place that sound, trying to understand why it fills me with such inexplicable dread. "Who's upstairs?" I ask, my voice sharper than I intended. My mother's smile doesn't waver, but something shifts in her eyes. "Oh," she says too casually, "that's just Lily, Samantha's daughter, your niece. She's been so excited to meet you." My niece. The word sits strangely in my mind as I process what my mother just said. Samantha has a daughter. A 10-year-old child who's been living in this house growing up with the grandmother and grandfather who threw me away like trash. The laughter upstairs continues innocent and carefree, and I feel something twist in my chest that I don't want to examine too closely. I didn't know Samantha had a child, I say, keeping my voice carefully neutral. Oh yes, my mother replies, already moving toward the kitchen as if this conversation is finished. Lily's our little miracle. You'll meet her properly at dinner tonight. It's going to be quite the family affair. Family affair. The words are almost funny considering I haven't been part of this family for 2 decades. But I don't say that. Instead, I let my mother guide me through the rest of the house tour, pointing out all the preparations for tomorrow's gala while carefully avoiding any room that might contain actual memories or honest conversations. By the time dinner rolls around that evening, I've been installed in a guest room, not my old bedroom, which apparently belongs to Lily now, and I've had several hours to steel myself for what comes next. I change into a black cocktail dress that's elegant without being ostentatious, though I know my mother will still catalog every expensive detail. The dining room has been transformed into something out of a magazine spread. The table is set with the good china, the pieces my mother once kept locked in a cabinet and only brought out for important guests. Crystal champagne flutes catch the light from an elaborate chandelier. There are 12 place settings, which means this isn't an intimate family dinner, but another performance, another opportunity for my mother to show off her reconciliation to an audience. I'm the first to arrive in the dining room, which gives me a moment to observe as others file in. My father appears in a wheelchair pushed by a nurse I don't recognize. Robert Scott is 70 now, and the stroke has aged him in ways that make my heart clench despite everything. His left side droops slightly, and his movements are slower, more deliberate. But his eyes are still sharp, still alert, and when he sees me standing by the window, he goes very still. We stare at each other across the room, and I wait for him to say something to acknowledge my presence, to offer even the smallest gesture of recognition or regret. But he just looks away, his jaw tight, and allows the nurse to position his wheelchair at the head of the table. Still silent, still choosing cowardice over courage. Then Samantha sweeps in, and I almost don't recognize her. My little sister has grown into a polished, perfect version of our mother, blonde hair styled in elegant waves, wearing a silk dress in deep emerald that probably cost more than she can afford, diamond studs in her ears that catch the light. She's playing a role just like everyone else in this house, performing the part of the devoted daughter who never left. Behind her is Ryan Thompson, and seeing him after 20 years is like being punched in the stomach with a memory I thought I'd buried. He's 40 now, still handsome, but worn in ways that have nothing to do with age. There are lines around his eyes that speak of exhaustion or unhappiness, or both. He's wearing a suit that doesn't quite fit right, his tie slightly crooked, and when his eyes meet mine across the room, I see something flash in them. Recognition guilt, maybe even pain, before he quickly looks away. The other guests filter in. Aunt Caroline, who always sided with my mother on everything. Uncle James and his new wife, whose name I don't remember. A couple I don't recognize who turn out to be local city council members. The mayor of Ashford, a pompous man named Gerald Hutchins, who keeps talking about the historic importance of preserving the Scott estate. Everyone is eager to be seen with me, the prodigal daughter who made it big, their successful talking point for the evening. My mother orchestrates the seating with the precision of a general planning a battle. I'm placed between the mayor and Aunt Caroline, positioned where I can be displayed but not allowed to control the conversation. Samantha and Ryan sit directly across from me, close enough that I can't avoid looking at them, far enough that private conversation is impossible. My father sits at the head of the table in his wheelchair, still silent, still unable or unwilling to meet my eyes. When everyone is seated, my mother stands raising her champagne flute with a practiced smile that doesn't reach her eyes. To second chances, she announces, her voice carrying that theatrical quality I remember from childhood. And to the daughter who reminds us that strength can bloom from adversity. The words are beautiful and completely hollow. Everyone drinks. Everyone murmurs agreement. No one mentions that the adversity I bloomed from was created in this very room at this very table by the woman who's now toasting my resilience. The meal begins, And it's an elaborate production course after course of expensive food prepared by the catering company, served by hired staff who move through the room like ghosts. The conversation flows around me, carefully choreographed to appear natural while avoiding anything resembling honesty. Samantha mentions that difficult time when we were all so young and confused, as if my exile was a mutual misunderstanding rather than a calculated cruelty. Aunt Caroline comments on how misunderstandings can tear families apart, nodding sagely as if she's offering profound wisdom instead of rewriting history. The mayor talks about the importance of forgiveness and community, completely unaware that he's performing in a play where he doesn't know the real script. No one speaks the truth. No one says the words accused, theft, liar, exile. No one acknowledges that they branded a 17-year-old girl a criminal and threw her into the snow on Christmas Eve. The past has been sanitized, repackaged, made palatable for public consumption. I play along, offering vague pleasantries and non-committal smiles while mentally cataloging every evasion, every lie, every careful omission. I notice how often my mother's eyes drift to my wrist, to the Cartier watch I'm wearing. How her gaze lingers on my diamond earrings, calculating their worth. She's not looking at me, her daughter. She's looking at me, her potential salvation. During dessert, some elaborate chocolate creation that probably cost more than the house's monthly utilities, Samantha leans across the table, her smile tight and practiced. "It must be lonely at the top, Jill," she says, her voice dripping with false concern. "All that money but no one to share it with." The comment lands exactly as she intended it, casual cruelty disguised as sisterly worry. I see my mother's lips twitch in what might be approval. Before I can respond, Ryan shifts uncomfortably in his seat and clears his throat. "How's the business doing?" he asks clearly, trying to redirect the conversation. "I read that article in Forbes. Impressive growth." Our eyes meet across the table, and for just a moment, I see something in his expression that makes my breath catch. Guilt, definitely. Regret, maybe. But there's something else, too. Something that looks almost like a warning, like he's trying to tell me something he can't say out loud. Before I can decipher it, Samantha's hand slides over his on the table, her fingers curling possessively around his. The gesture is territorial, a claim of ownership, and Ryan's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. "We're just so happy you're successful," Samantha adds, her smile never wavering. "Someone had to make it out of this town." The implication is clear. While I was off building my empire, she was here being the good daughter, taking care of the family, doing what was expected. And now I'm supposed to feel grateful or guilty or obligated to reward her sacrifice. I'm about to respond when a small voice interrupts from the doorway. "Mommy, who's that lady?" Everyone turns. Standing in the doorway in pink pajamas decorated with unicorns is a little girl, maybe 10 years old, with blonde hair falling loose around her shoulders. She's staring at me with eyes that make my heart stop. Eyes that I recognize because I see them every morning in my own mirror, dark brown, wide set, with that same slight upturn at the outer corners that my father used to call Scott eyes. But my father's eyes are blue. Samantha's eyes are blue. Ryan's eyes are hazel. This child is staring at me with my own eyes, and suddenly nothing in this room makes sense anymore. Samantha moves so quickly she nearly knocks over her wine glass. "Sweetie, you're supposed to be in bed." Her voice is too bright, too loud, carrying that edge of panic parents get when their children say something they shouldn't. But Lily doesn't move from the doorway. She's staring at me with an intensity that's unsettling in someone so young, her head tilted slightly to one side, as if she's trying to solve a puzzle. "You look like the lady in Grandma's old photos," she says with the brutal honesty only children possess, the ones she keeps in the attic. The room goes absolutely silent. I can hear the tick of the antique clock on the mantel, the soft clink of someone's fork against china, the sharp intake of breath from my mother's direction. Photos in the attic. Photos my mother claimed were thrown away, erased, forgotten, along with the daughter they depicted. Before anyone can respond, Ryan is out of his chair, crossing the room with quick strides. "Come on, Lilybug," he says softly, scooping her up with practiced ease. "It's way past your bedtime. Let's get you back upstairs. But Lily keeps her eyes locked on mine over her father's shoulder, still studying me with that unnerving focus. And I'm studying her right back, cataloging details that make my chest tight and my breathing shallow. She has my nose. Not approximately my nose, not a family resemblance that could be explained by shared genetics through Samantha. My exact nose with that slight upturn at the tip and the small bump on the bridge where I broke it falling off my bike when I was 8. She has my eyes. Those dark brown eyes that neither of my blue-eyed parents could explain, that marked me as different from the moment I was born, that I now know mark me as someone else's biological child entirely. And she has the same stubborn set to her jaw that I see every morning when I'm preparing for a difficult negotiation, that expression of determination mixed with defiance that's so familiar, it makes my heart ache. The resemblance isn't the vague similarity of an aunt and niece. It's something deeper, something that shouldn't be possible, something that makes every instinct I've honed over 20 years of survival scream that something here is very, very wrong. "Good night!" Lily calls out as Ryan carries her toward the stairs, and she waves at me with small fingers, a gesture so innocent and sweet that I feel something crack in the armor I've spent 2 decades constructing. I wave back without thinking, and then she's gone, and the dining room slowly comes back to life with forced conversation and nervous laughter, and my mother suggesting we move to the living room for after-dinner drinks. But I'm barely listening because my mind is racing through calculations, through timelines, through possibilities that seem impossible, yet somehow fit together with terrifying precision. Lily is 10 years old, maybe 11. That means she was born around 2014, conceived sometime in late 2013 or early 2014. 9 years after I was exiled from this house, 9 years after my mother threw me into the snow and my father stood silent. I watch Samantha and Ryan as they resettle in the living room, accepting cognac from my mother, sitting close together on the antique sofa but not quite touching. They married in 2013 according to the Facebook stalking Marcus did before I came here. A small wedding at the local church, just family and close friends Samantha, in a simple white dress that the local paper described as elegant. But I remember Ryan. I remember being 15 and 16 and 17 with him, remember planning our future together before my mother's manipulation tore us apart. He was my first love, my first everything. And when I left Ashford with nothing but 2 suitcases and a broken heart, I left him behind too. How did he end up married to my sister? How did the boy who promised to love me forever end up building a life with Samantha of all people? And then there's what I remember from my pre-visit research from the social media posts I scrolled through in the lonely hours of my Seattle penthouse. Samantha had written about fertility struggles in 2012, about treatments that weren't working, about the heartbreak of wanting a child and facing disappointment month after month. Yet, here is Lily. Perfect and healthy and bearing features that have nothing to do with Samantha's delicate blonde beauty or Ryan's hazel-eyed charm. Here is a child who looks like me, who has my mannerisms, who noticed a resemblance to photos that supposedly don't exist anymore. I think about my father's expression during dinner, how he looked at Lily when she came downstairs. It wasn't the warm affection of a grandfather admiring his granddaughter. It was something else entirely. Something that looked like guilt, like knowledge, like a secret weighing so heavily on his conscience that even his stroke-damaged face couldn't hide it. The evening drags on with meaningless conversation and performative family bonding. I smile and nod and say the right things while my mind works through scenarios, through possibilities, through questions I don't yet know how to ask. Finally, mercifully, the guests begin to leave. The mayor shakes my hand and talks about tomorrow's gala. Aunt Caroline hugs me with too much perfume and too little sincerity. The city council members promise to see me at the event. Samantha and Ryan excuse themselves to check on Lily, and I watch them climb the stairs together, noticing how Samantha's hand grips Ryan's arm just a little too tightly, how his shoulders are tense beneath his ill-fitting suit jacket. My mother suggests I get some rest, that tomorrow will be a long day, that I should sleep in my old room, which has been preserved just as you left it. But when I climb the stairs and open the door, I find it's not my old room at all. It's a guest room decorated in neutral tones with none of my belongings, none of my posters or books or trophies. My actual childhood bedroom, I learned earlier, now belongs to Lily. Even here, I've been erased and replaced. I lie in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to quiet my racing thoughts. The house settles around me with creaks and groans I remember from childhood, and sleep feels impossible. Around midnight, I give up and slip out of bed, padding downstairs in my pajamas and bare feet. I'm not sure what I'm looking for, just that I need to move to investigate to find some answer to the questions that are keeping me awake. That's when I see the light coming from my father's study, that forbidden room where important documents and family secrets were always kept locked away. I move quietly down the hallway and peer around the doorframe. My mother sits at the desk, illuminated by a single lamp, going through stacks of paperwork with the focused intensity of someone looking for something specific. Financial documents by the look of them. Bills and statements and official-looking forms. When she senses my presence and looks up, her hands move with guilty quickness, shuffling the papers into a drawer and sliding it shut. "Can't sleep?" she asks, forcing brightness into her voice that sounds hollow in the quiet house. "I understand. It must be strange being back after so long. Tomorrow's the big gala. You'll meet everyone, see how much this community still cares about this family." I lean against the doorframe, studying her in the lamplight. "Tell me about Lily," I say, keeping my tone casual, conversational. Something flickers in my mother's expression, too quick to name but unmistakably there. "Oh, she's our miracle," she says, but her voice has gone careful, guarded. "Samantha and Ryan tried for years to have a child. The doctors said it might never happen. And then suddenly there she was. God's timing, you know. Everything happens for a reason." She's lying. I can feel it in the way she won't quite meet my eyes, and the tension in her shoulders, and the practiced quality of her words. This is a story she's told before, rehearsed and perfected. "She looks like me," I say quietly. "Family resemblance." My mother replies too quickly. "The Scott genes are strong. You can see it in the nose, the eyes. It skips generations sometimes." But we both know I don't have Scott genes. We both know the hospital made a mistake 37 years ago, that the blood tests revealed I'm not biologically related to this family at all. My mother stands smoothing her skirt, moving toward the door in a clear dismissal. "You should get some rest, Jillian. Big day tomorrow." As she passes me, I notice the drawer she shoved the papers into isn't fully closed. A corner of what looks like a medical document peeks out, official letterhead visible even in the dim light. I watch my mother climb the stairs, wait until I hear her bedroom door close, and then I'm about to turn back toward the study when I hear it. Her voice low and urgent, coming from behind her closed door. She's on the phone. I move silently up the stairs, pressing myself against the wall near her room, straining to hear. "I told you she's asking questions about Lily." My mother hisses into the phone, her voice tight with stress. "She noticed the resemblance. She's not stupid. We need to handle this before she finds out the truth." My blood turns to ice. I stand frozen in the hallway, barely breathing as my mother continues. "I don't care what it costs. Keep those records buried. If she discovers what we did, everything falls apart." I don't sleep for the rest of the night. I lie in that guest room bed, listening to my mother's muffled voice through the walls, trying to make out words, trying to understand what truth she's so desperate to keep buried. By the time dawn breaks over Ashford, I've made a decision. If they're hiding something, I'm going to find it. The house comes alive early with preparation for tonight's gala. Caterers arrive before 7, hauling equipment through the kitchen. Florists arrange elaborate centerpieces in the dining room. A crew arrives to set up a temporary stage in the ballroom. Everyone is too busy to notice me slipping down the hallway toward my father's study. The drawer is locked now. Of course it is. My mother isn't careless enough to leave evidence sitting around. Not when she knows I'm in the house asking questions, noticing things I shouldn't notice. But old habits die hard, and some things about this house never change. My mother has kept spare keys in the same place for 30 years inside a hollowed-out book on the second shelf of the library, a leather-bound copy of Pride and Prejudice that she bought for decoration and never actually read. The key slides into the lock with a soft click that sounds deafening in the quiet study. Inside the drawer, I find a manila folder labeled Mortgage Restructuring 2022 in my mother's precise handwriting. My hands are shaking as I open it, and what I see makes my vision blur at the edges. The house was refinanced 3 years ago for $800,000. The paperwork is official notarized, bearing the seal of Columbia River Bank and the signatures of multiple witnesses. And there, on the cosigner line, is my name, Jillian Marie Scott, written in what looks exactly like my handwriting. My signature replicated with enough precision that a casual observer would never question its authenticity. I stare at that signature at the date March 15, 2022, and feel rage build in my chest like a physical pressure. I was in Tokyo on March 15, 2022. I was closing the Nakamura Tower deal, the acquisition that pushed Aurora Estates past the $40 million mark. I have time-stamped photos from that trip, emails sent from my hotel transaction records, proving I was on the other side of the planet when this signature was supposedly witnessed and notarized in Oregon. This isn't just deception. This isn't just a family trying to reconnect with their estranged daughter. This is felony forgery, identity theft, fraud on a scale that could send someone to prison for years. They didn't just abandon me 20 years ago. They've been actively stealing from me, using my name, my credit, my identity to save themselves while I built an empire they had no part in creating. My hands shake as I pull out my phone and start photographing every page. The loan documents, the forged signature, the notary seal, the payment schedule showing they're already 3 months behind. Evidence that will hold up in any court in the country. But there's more in the drawer. Beneath the mortgage papers, I find an older file, the manila folder yellowed with age and labeled in faded ink, Medical Records, Scott Family, Confidential. Something in my gut tells me to stop, to put it back, to walk away before I learn something I can't unlearn. But I've never been good at protecting myself from painful truths, so I open it. Inside are hospital records from 2004 from Providence Memorial Hospital in Portland. Samantha's records from when she was 15 years old and facing what the documents describe as acute lymphoblastic leukemia requiring immediate bone marrow transplant. I remember that year. I remember my mother's constant hospital trips, the hushed conversations behind closed doors, the way Samantha got thinner and paler while I was told not to bother her, not to stress her out, to be the strong one, because my sister needed all the family's attention. What I didn't know, what nobody told me, was that they tested the whole family for bone marrow compatibility. The results are there in clinical black and white. Margaret Scott mother, 99.7% match. Robert Scott father, 48% match. Jillian Scott sister, 0% match. Blood type incompatible. Recommend retesting for biological relationship. I read that line 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, waiting for the words to change for my brain to process them differently. 0% match. Blood type incompatible. Recommend retesting for biological relationship. There's a handwritten note paper-clipped to the report dated May 2004 in a doctor's careful script. Family informed of discrepancy. May 2004. Parents requested confidentiality clause. Patient advised hospital error likely occurred at birth. Family declined further investigation. Margaret Scott signed waiver releasing hospital from liability for records mix-up. The paper trembles in my hands. I set it down on the desk because I'm afraid I'll tear it, afraid the physical evidence will disintegrate if I hold it too tightly. They knew. In May 2004, when I was 16 years old and preparing for my junior year of high school, when I was still their daughter in every way that mattered, they discovered I wasn't biologically related to them. Some hospital error, some terrible mix-up in 1987 when I was born, meant the baby they brought home wasn't actually theirs. And they said nothing. They requested confidentiality. They signed waivers. They kept me in the dark while they processed this information, while they decided what it meant, while they figured out what to do with the stranger living in their house. I think about the year that followed. 2004 to 2005, my senior year of high school. How my mother grew colder, more distant, more critical of everything I did. How family dinners became tense affairs where I felt like an outsider at my own table. How Samantha recovered from her illness became the golden child who could do no wrong while I became the problem that needed solving. By Christmas 2005, my mother had found her solution. Frame the wrong daughter as a thief. Cast her out with righteous indignation. Let the community think she was protecting the family from a criminal rather than admitting she was discarding a child who didn't share her blood. It's so clean, so perfectly calculated. No guilt required when you're just correcting a mistake, when you're prioritizing your real daughter over the hospital's error. I sit in that study as pieces click into place with sickening precision. They discovered I wasn't theirs in 2004. They had a year to process it, to plan, to decide. And in 2005, they found their excuse to erase me completely, to focus all their resources and love and attention on Samantha, without the burden of pretending to care about a stranger. The family could move forward unburdened by the daughter who never should have been theirs in the first place. And now, 20 years later, they've forged my name on legal documents worth $800,000. They've used my identity, my credit, my success to save a house I was never meant to inherit, to rescue a family I was never actually part of. I'm methodically photographing every page of the medical records, my hands steadier now that rage has replaced shock when I hear the soft whir of wheelchair wheels behind me. I turn slowly. My father sits in the doorway of the study, his stroke-damaged face lined with something that might be resignation or might be relief. His left hand trembles in his lap, but his eyes are clear and focused on the files spread across the desk. "You weren't supposed to find that," he says, his voice rough and breaking on the words. The stroke has affected his speech, making each syllable an effort, but I understand him perfectly. We stare at each other across the study, and I wait for him to tell me to put it back, to mind my own business, to stop digging into family matters that don't concern me. Instead, he wheels himself forward slightly, his good hand gripping the armrest of his chair. "But maybe," he says slowly, each word weighted with 20 years of silence, "maybe it's time you knew everything." My father wheels himself fully into the study and uses his good hand to push the door closed behind him. The click of the latch sounds final, like we're sealing ourselves into a confession booth where the only witness is truth. "We didn't know until you were 17. He begins his words, slow and deliberate, shaped carefully around the stroke damage that's left half his mouth unwilling to cooperate. "You have to understand that. For 17 years you were ours, completely, unquestionably ours." I remain standing by the desk, the medical files still spread before me like accusatory evidence. I don't make this easier for him. I just wait. "You were brought home from Providence Memorial on October 3, 1987. He continues, staring at his trembling left hand as if it belongs to someone else. 7 pounds 4 ounces, dark hair, dark eyes. The most beautiful thing your mother and I had ever seen. We had no reason to question anything. You were our firstborn, our daughter." The word daughter catches in his throat, and I watch him struggle with it, with the weight of what that word meant for 17 years and what it means now. When Samantha got sick in 2004, when they said she needed a bone marrow transplant, we all got tested. You, me, your mother. It was routine. We expected someone in the family to match. He pauses, gathering strength for what comes next. "The hospital called us in for a private meeting. Said there was an irregularity in the test results. You weren't compatible with Samantha, not even close. Different blood type, different genetic markers, different everything." I close my eyes briefly, imagining that meeting. My parents sitting in some sterile hospital office, being told their daughter isn't actually their daughter, that some catastrophic error occurred 17 years ago, and nobody noticed until a life-or-death medical crisis forced the truth into the open. They investigated. my father says. Went back through records from 1987, found that there were 2 baby girls born within 3 hours of each other that night. Similar weights, similar appearances. The records got mixed up. Someone put the wrong bracelet on the wrong baby, and nobody caught the mistake. His voice breaks completely now, tears running down the side of his face that still has feeling. We took home the wrong child, and some other family took home ours. The room tilts. I grip the edge of the desk to steady myself. We hired a private investigator, he continues. Had to know who you really belonged to, what happened to our biological daughter. It took him 6 weeks to track down the other family. He meets my eyes for the first time, and what I see there is grief so deep it could swallow cities. Michael and Sarah Chen. They died in a car accident in 1995. Interstate 5 just south of Seattle. Your biological father was a musician. Your biological mother was a middle school teacher. By all accounts, they were good people who loved their daughter very much. My knees give out. I sink into the leather chair behind the desk, trying to process what he's telling me. I had real parents. Biological parents who raised me until I was 8 years old, except they didn't, because I was here living with the Scotts, while their actual daughter was somewhere else, living a life that should have been mine. What happened to her? I whisper. To your real daughter? She died with them, my father says quietly. In that same accident. She was 8 years old. Emma Chen, they called her. We saw photos. She had your mother's blonde hair, my eyes. She was ours by blood, and we never got to meet her. The cruelty of it is staggering. They lost their biological daughter before they even knew she existed, while simultaneously discovering that the daughter they'd raised for 17 years wasn't actually theirs. No wonder my mother broke. Your mother struggled with it, my father says, and I can hear the careful neutrality he's trying to maintain, the attempt to explain without excusing. She became obsessed with Samantha, called her our real daughter when she thought I couldn't hear. I argued with her, told her you were both our daughters, that biology didn't matter, that we'd raised you and loved you, and that made you ours. He laughs bitterly. But something in Margaret broke after we lost Emma, after the cancer scare. She convinced herself that keeping you was a betrayal of Samantha, that we had limited resources and should invest them in our biological child. So she framed me, I say flatly. The theft, the money, all of it was fabricated. He nods, shame etched into every line of his weathered face. She withdrew the money herself, 2 weeks before Christmas, in cash from a branch near your work. She wore a wig, sunglasses, practiced imitating your signature. Then she planted $2,000 in your room and told me you'd stolen from the family. His tears flow freely now. I should have stopped her. I should have demanded proof, investigated, protected you. But I chose peace over justice. I chose to believe the lie because it was easier than confronting your mother, easier than admitting what we'd become. You let her destroy me, I say, and my voice is surprisingly steady. You stood in that doorway and watched her throw me into the snow, and you said nothing. I know. The words are barely audible. I've lived with that silence every day for 20 years. I've paid for it with my health, my conscience, every moment of peace I might have had. But knowing I deserve this suffering doesn't change what I did to you. Doesn't give you back what we stole. We sit in silence for a long moment, the study heavy with confessions and regrets that can never be taken back. Outside, I can hear the caterers setting up for tonight's gala, the sounds of a party being constructed on the foundation of lies. Why are you telling me this now? I finally ask. Because you deserve to know the truth before tonight, he says. Before your mother tries to manipulate you into saving this house, this family, this lie we've been living. You deserve to make your choices with your eyes open. I want to thank him for this honesty, but I can't. It's 20 years too late, purchased with desperation rather than offered with genuine courage. Still, it's something. It's more than my mother has given me. I'm about to respond when I hear her voice drifting from somewhere upstairs. My mother on her phone, her tone clipped and businesslike. I hold up a hand to silence my father and move quietly to the study door, opening it just enough to hear. The investment opportunity that Jillian represents. My mother is saying, her voice carrying down the stairwell with perfect clarity. We need to play this carefully, Ethan. She's built an empire. If we handle this right, we can secure a significant settlement. I pull out my phone thumb, finding the voice recording app, hitting the red button. My father watches me from his wheelchair, understanding dawning in his eyes. She won't want the publicity of a family lawsuit. My mother continues, her voice cold and transactional in a way that makes my blood freeze. Especially not with the fraud allegations I can manufacture. I have the theft accusation from 2005. I have witnesses who'll testify she was always troubled. The forged mortgage documents can be explained as a misunderstanding. We'll paint her as vindictive, unstable. She's strong enough to survive this betrayal. She's already survived one. This time she'll pay us to make it go away quietly. I stand in the hallway with my phone recording every word, watching my mother pace in her bedroom upstairs, completely unaware that I'm listening. She hasn't changed. Not in 20 years. Not in the face of her husband's stroke. Not with her daughter standing in the house she was exiled from. Margaret Scott is exactly who she was in 2005. A woman who sees people as assets or liabilities, who calculates worth in dollars rather than love, who will sacrifice anyone and anything to protect herself. This reunion was never about healing. It was never about regret or reconciliation or second chances. It was about extraction, emotional, financial complete. She saw my net worth on national television, and saw salvation, saw a way to save the house and her reputation and her comfortable life. And she was willing to destroy me a second time to get it. I take a breath, smooth my expression into something cold and controlled, and walk up the stairs with my phone still recording. My mother's bedroom door is partially open, and I can see her standing by the window, phone pressed to her ear, completely absorbed in her machinations. I push the door open fully and step inside. She turns, startled, and for just a moment, her mask slips and I see calculation and fear flash across her face. "Hello, Mother," I say quietly, holding up my phone so she can see the recording light still blinking red. "I think it's time we had an honest conversation. And this time the whole world is going to hear it." My mother's face goes white as she stares at the phone in my hand, at the recording light that's captured every word of her conversation with this mysterious Ethan, every cold calculation about how to extract money from the daughter she destroyed 20 years ago. "Jillian," she says, her voice shifting instantly into something softer, more maternal, the performance clicking into place like a mask. "Sweetheart, you don't understand what you heard. That was just... save it." I interrupt, my voice quiet and deadly calm. "I have everything I need. The forged mortgage documents. The medical records proving you knew I wasn't your biological daughter. Dad's confession about how you fabricated the theft accusation. And now this." I hold up the phone. "You plotting with someone named Ethan to extort me? It's over, Mother. Whatever game you thought you were playing, you just lost." She opens her mouth, closes it, and for the first time in my life, I see Margaret Scott at a complete loss for words. I turn and walk out of her bedroom, down the stairs, past my father who's still sitting in his wheelchair in the study doorway, watching me with something that might be pride or might be fear. I need air. I need space. I need to think. I grab my coat from the hall closet and step out into the winter evening. The temperature has dropped and fresh snow is falling softly over the garden where I used to play as a child, back when I thought this was my home and these were my people. I'm standing by the frozen fountain, breathing clouds into the December air, when I hear footsteps crunching through the snow behind me. "Jillian." I turn. Ryan Thompson stands a few feet away, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, looking older than his 40 years. The security lights from the house cast shadows across his face, highlighting the lines of exhaustion and regret. "I need to tell you something," he says, his voice rough. "Before you hear it from someone else. before tomorrow night when everything explodes. I wait, saying nothing. After 20 years, he can take his time finding the words. In 2005, your mother offered me $50,000 to leave town and never contact you again. The words hit me like a physical blow, even though some part of me already suspected something like this. Of course she did. Of course Margaret Scott, who orchestrated everything else with surgical precision, wouldn't leave my first love to chance. I was 19, Ryan continues, his voice cracking. Broke scared trying to help my family keep our construction business afloat. My dad had some tax issues, nothing major, just paperwork mistakes, but your mother found out about them. She said if I didn't take the money and disappear, she'd report him to the IRS. Make sure we lost everything. Destroy my family. He pulls out his phone, opens a banking app, turns the screen toward me. I see an account statement showing a balance of $180,000. I've never spent a single dollar of it, he says. 20 years of compound interest just sitting there. I kept it in case I ever found the courage to give it back to you, to tell you the truth, to explain why I disappeared without a word. I stare at that number, at the evidence of his guilt preserved for 2 decades, and I don't know whether to be moved or furious. She didn't stop there, Ryan says, and now his voice is thick with bitterness that matches my own. After I left, she sent you letters. Fake letters, supposedly from me, saying terrible things. That I never really loved you. That you were too ambitious, too focused on yourself, that I couldn't handle being with someone who thought they were better than everyone else. My breath catches. I remember those letters arriving one after another in the mailbox of the friend's couch I was sleeping on. I remember reading them through tears, feeling like the last piece of my old life was crumbling. I never questioned their authenticity because the handwriting looked right. The details were specific, and I was 17 and alone and willing to believe that everyone I'd ever loved had been lying to me. You never saw them, did you? Ryan asks gently. Your mother intercepted your mail that whole year. Anything I actually tried to send you, she destroyed. And she did the same thing to me. I got letters supposedly from you on your stationery in your handwriting. They said you were glad I'd left, that you'd moved on, that you had better things to do than waste time on a townie with no future. I close my eyes, feeling the full scope of her manipulation settle over me like suffocating weight. She didn't just separate us. She engineered our destruction with forged letters and manufactured cruelty, making each of us believe the other had betrayed us, ensuring we'd never reach out, never question, never discover the truth. She orchestrated our separation like a military operation, Ryan says, and I hear something break in his voice. And then years later, when I moved back to Ashford after my dad died, when Samantha needed someone and I was broken and guilty and convinced I owed your family something for taking that money, your mother convinced me that marrying her was how I could make things right. That I owed the Scotts my loyalty, that you'd moved on to bigger and better things and wouldn't care anyway. You married my sister out of obligation, I ask, opening my eyes to look at him. I married her because I thought I deserved to be unhappy, he says quietly. Because I thought maybe if I gave the Scotts what they wanted, it would somehow balance the scales for what I'd done to you. I was young and stupid and so buried in guilt that I couldn't see I was just letting your mother manipulate me all over again. We stand in the snow-covered garden, 2 people whose lives were systematically dismantled by a woman who saw love as a weakness and control as survival. The fountain between us is frozen solid ice, preserving water in mid-flow, stopped in time like everything else in this cursed place. I'm sorry, Ryan says, and the words sound inadequate, useless against 20 years of damage. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that every day for 20 years I've regretted taking that money. Every day I've wondered what our lives would have been if I'd been brave enough to say no. I look at him standing there in the falling snow, this man who was supposed to be my future, who became another casualty of Margaret Scott's ruthless need for control. And I feel something shift inside me, something that's been locked in place since I was 17 years old, standing in this exact spot, being told I was worthless and unwanted. For 20 years, I've carried shame, The shame of being abandoned, of being the wrong daughter, of being unlovable enough that my own parents could throw me away. I built an empire trying to prove I had value, trying to demonstrate that their rejection was their loss, trying to become so successful that the girl they discarded would haunt them. But I wasn't weak. I wasn't flawed. I wasn't the problem. I was targeted by a master manipulator who saw her non-biological daughter as a threat to her real child's resources, who calculated the most efficient way to erase that threat, who then continued to profit from my absence while simultaneously using my name and identity to save herself when her world started crumbling. My mother didn't just reject me. She systematically dismantled my entire support system, isolated me, destroyed my relationship, and then crafted a narrative where she was the wounded mother whose ungrateful daughter abandoned the family. I spent 2 decades proving I was worthy of love. I tell Ryan, my voice steady now, clear. I built Aurora Estates because I thought if I was successful enough, rich enough, powerful enough, it would somehow prove that they were wrong about me, that I was worth keeping. Jillian. But the problem was never me. I continue, and I feel the truth of it settling into my bones, replacing the shame I've carried for so long. It was them. It was her. Margaret Scott is a sociopath who sees people as chess pieces, and she's been playing a game for 20 years where she's convinced herself she's the victim. I pull out my phone, looking at the recording I made, at the evidence I've gathered, at the ammunition I've been collecting since I walked back into this house. It's time they learn what real consequences feel like, I say quietly. Ryan grabs my hand, his fingers cold against mine. What are you going to do? I look at him, at the garden, at the house glowing with Christmas lights, while darkness festers in every room. I think about my mother upstairs, already plotting her next move, already calculating how to spin this. I think about tomorrow night's gala, about the 500 guests who've paid to witness a heartwarming reunion, about the cameras and reporters and community members who think they're celebrating a family healing. I smile, and I feel how cold it is, how different from anything the old Jillian could have managed. I'm going to give them exactly what they wanted, I say. A family reunion they'll never forget, starting with tomorrow's gala. The next 24 hours pass in a blur of preparation. I make calls from my rental car parked 3 blocks from the house, coordinating with Marcus back in Seattle, with my attorney Catherine Wu, with the production company I've hired, under the guise of filming a documentary about family reconciliation and second chances. My mother thinks the cameras are here to capture her triumph. She has no idea they're here to document her destruction. By the time the Scott Estate Christmas Gala begins at 6 o'clock on December 23rd, everything is in place. The house has been transformed into something out of a fairy tale. Every room glitters with thousands of white lights. The ballroom where I used to practice piano has been cleared and fitted with a temporary stage. Ice sculptures grace the entryway. Servers in black ties circulate with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than my mother's monthly mortgage payment. A string quartet plays classical Christmas music in the corner. Everything is elegant, expensive, and designed to prove that the Scott family still matters, still has status, still deserves to be saved. 500 guests fill the house, paying $500 each for the privilege of witnessing what they think will be a heartwarming reconciliation. I recognize faces from my childhood former teachers, family friends, local business owners. The mayor is here, of course, working the room with practiced politician charm. There are reporters from 3 local news stations, their cameras capturing every moment. The Ashford Gazette has sent their senior journalist. Even a stringer from the Portland Tribune is here, notebook in hand, chasing what she thinks is a feel-good holiday story. What none of them know is that my own film crew is also here, 3 cameras positioned strategically around the room, presented as a documentary team, filming a piece about forgiveness and family healing. The crew chief, a woman named Diana who owes me a favor from a property deal 3 years ago, knows exactly what this really is. Her equipment is professional grade, her audio crystal clear, her live stream connection to my company's social media accounts ready to go live at my signal. 300,000 followers waiting to watch what they think is a Christmas miracle. Marcus arrived this morning officially as my assistant, but actually as my covert operative. While helping with gala setup, he's planted wireless microphones throughout the house. The study where my mother does her scheming. The kitchen where staff gossip. Even my mother's bedroom where she makes her private calls to this mysterious Ethan. Every conversation, every whispered plot, every unguarded moment is being captured and stored on secure servers. I move through the party like I was born for this role, and in a way I was. 20 years of building a business empire has taught me how to perform, how to make people see exactly what I want them to see. I pose for photographs with my mother, her arm around my waist, both of us smiling for the cameras. I laugh at my father's halting jokes, wheeling him around to introduce him to guests playing The Devoted Daughter Returned. I compliment Samantha's emerald green dress, admire her hair, ask about Lily with genuine seeming warmth. To everyone watching this is a beautiful story of reconciliation. The prodigal daughter who made it big, coming home to heal old wounds and save the family estate. Everyone loves a redemption arc, especially at Christmas. When a reporter from the Gazette approaches me with her recorder, I give her exactly what she wants. "How does it feel to be home after 20 years?" She asks, her eyes bright with the assumption that I'll say something touching about forgiveness and the power of family love. I smile, the expression I've perfected in boardrooms and negotiations, warm, but with an edge that most people miss. The truth has a way of bringing families together, I say carefully. And tonight, I'm committed to nothing but truth. She nods, scribbling in her notebook, completely missing the warning embedded in my words. At 7:45, right on schedule, my mother appears at my elbow and guides me away from a conversation with the mayor. "A private moment before the big announcement," she says, her voice pitched for the guests nearby to hear, maternal and warm. "Just mother and daughter." She leads me to the study, closing the door behind us, and I watch her mask drop the moment we're alone. The warm mother disappears, replaced by the calculating strategist I've come to know so well. "I've prepared a simple statement for you to read," she says, pulling a card from her pocket and handing it to me. Her handwriting is as elegant as always, each word chosen with precision. I read it slowly. The statement commits me to a $2 million donation to save the historic Scott estate and preserve our family legacy. It establishes a family trust with Margaret Scott as primary trustee, giving her complete financial control over the funds. It includes language about healing past misunderstandings and honoring the bonds of family regardless of challenges. It's a masterpiece of manipulation, carefully worded to make me look generous while actually signing over control of millions to a woman who forged my signature on mortgage documents. "This is your chance to do the right thing," my mother says, watching my face carefully. "After all, you owe this family everything, even if you weren't born into it." There it is. The truth finally spoken aloud in private. The acknowledgement that I'm not really hers, combined with the implication that this somehow creates a debt I need to repay. As if being raised under false pretenses, then framed and exiled, means I should be grateful and compliant. I look up from the card and meet my mother's eyes. For just a moment, I let her see the daughter she created, not the biological mistake she tried to erase, but the woman forged in the fires of her cruelty, the CEO who built an empire out of spite, the strategist who learned from the master manipulator herself. "You're right, Mother," I say quietly. "It is time to do the right thing." She smiles, relief and triumph flooding her face. She actually thinks I'm agreeing to her terms, that I'm going to walk out on that stage and hand over $2 million to save her from the consequences of her own greed and cruelty. She has no idea what's coming. At 8 o'clock exactly, the string quartet stops playing. The house falls into expectant silence. Margaret takes my arm and walks me toward the ballroom where the makeshift stage has been set up, draped in white fabric and Christmas greenery, lit by professional lighting that makes everything look magical and pure. 500 guests turn to watch as we enter. Cameras lift. Phones come out for photos and videos. The live stream goes active, the red light on Diana's main camera blinking to indicate we're now broadcasting to 300,000 people across the country. My mother gives me one final squeeze of encouragement, one last smile that's meant to look maternal, but just looks victorious. And then I'm climbing the 3 steps to the stage, taking the microphone from its stand, looking out at a sea of faces that expect to witness a Christmas miracle. I see Marcus in the back, his phone showing me the live stream viewer count climbing rapidly. I see the reporters with their cameras trained on me. I see Samantha standing with Ryan, her hand gripping his arm tightly, some instinct telling her that something isn't quite right. I see my father in his wheelchair near the stage, his expression unreadable resignation and fear warring in his eyes. And I see my mother standing just off stage, her smile brilliant and false, already counting the $2 million she thinks I'm about to give her. I smile back at her. Then I turn to face the cameras, the guests, the 300,000 people watching live, and I begin. Thank you all for coming tonight. I want to tell you a story, the real story of the Scott family, and I promise you've never heard anything like it. I start speaking softly, almost conversationally, as if I'm sharing memories with old friends gathered around a fireplace. I grew up in this house. I begin looking around at the familiar rooms now filled with strangers. Every Christmas we had the same traditions. My mother would make gingerbread cookies from her grandmother's recipe. My father would read The Night Before Christmas by the tree. My sister and I would stay up late trying to catch Santa. The audience smiles, leaning in. This is what they paid for the nostalgia, the warmth, the redemption. We looked like the perfect family. I continue, my voice still gentle. The kind you'd see in magazines or holiday cards. Successful parents, 2 beautiful daughters, a historic house full of love and tradition. I pause, letting that image settle in their minds. Then I let my tone shift, hardening like water turning to ice. But the most important tradition in this family is lying. The room stiffens. I pull out my phone and signal to Diana. Within seconds, the screen behind me flickers to life, projecting the first document, the forged mortgage papers with my signature clearly visible. This is a refinancing agreement from 2022. I say, my voice carrying clearly through the suddenly silent ballroom. $800,000 with my name as co-signer and guarantor, except I never signed this document. I was in Tokyo on March 15, 2022, closing a $40 million deal. This signature is a forgery, identity theft, felony fraud. Gasps ripple through the crowd. I see phones coming out, people starting to record. My mother's face has gone white. I swipe to the next image, the medical records from 2004. 20 years ago, when my sister needed a bone marrow transplant, the hospital ran compatibility tests on the entire family. The results revealed something my parents had never suspected. I read directly from the document projected behind me. Jillian Scott, 0% match. Blood type incompatible. Recommend retesting for biological relationship. The crowd is absolutely silent now, 500 people frozen in collective shock. My parents discovered I wasn't their biological daughter. I say, letting each word land with precision. I was switched at birth, a hospital error from 1987. My biological parents died when I was 8 years old. I never got to meet them. Instead, I was raised by the Scotts, who loved me as their own for 17 years. Or so I thought. I swipe to the next image, the doctor's handwritten note about the confidentiality clause. Instead of loving me anyway, instead of recognizing that family is built on more than biology, my mother made a choice. She decided to erase the wrong daughter so she could focus all her resources on her real child. My mother finally finds her voice. Jillian, stop this. She tries to move toward the stage, but 2 security guards step smoothly in front of her. They're wearing the same uniforms as the rest of the hired event security, but I paid them 3 times their rate this morning with a very specific instruction. Do not let Margaret Scott leave this room or approach the stage under any circumstances. On Christmas Eve 2005, I continue, my voice steady, despite the chaos building around me. My mother accused me of stealing $12,000 from the family college fund. She had withdrawn the money herself, planted cash in my room, and fabricated evidence to make me look guilty. When I protested my innocence, when I begged them to believe me, she threw me out of this house. I was 17 years old. My father stood in that doorway and said nothing while I stood in the snow with everything I owned in 2 suitcases. I can see tears on some faces and the audience, shock on others. The cameras are still rolling the live stream. Viewer count climbing past 500,000, according to the monitor Marcus is holding up in the back. She fabricated a theft, destroyed my reputation, and exiled a 17-year-old girl into a winter night because I wasn't biologically hers, and she'd decided I didn't deserve the resources she wanted to save for Samantha. That's when my sister breaks. "Stop it!" Samantha's scream cuts through the ballroom like a knife. "Just stop!" She pushes through the crowd, her elegant composure completely shattered, mascara running down her face in black streaks, her hands shaking. "You think you're so perfect, Jill? You think you're the victim here?" Every camera in the room swings toward her. The live stream refocuses. This is better than anything I could have scripted. "You weren't even supposed to be part of this family," Samantha shouts, her voice breaking with rage and something that might be guilt. "Mom did what she had to do. She chose her real daughter over a stranger. You were a mistake, a hospital error, someone else's baby that we got stuck with." The crowd gasps. Someone drops a champagne glass, the crystal shattering on the hardwood floor. Samantha seems to realize what she's just said, what she's just admitted on camera in front of 500 witnesses and thousands watching online. She tries to backtrack, her hands coming up as if to physically take back the words. "I didn't mean that's not, but it's too late. The truth is out, captured in high definition, spreading across social media in real time. We never wanted you back," she sobs, and now the words are tumbling out like she can't stop them, like something's broken inside her and all the poison is spilling out. "We needed your money. That's the only reason Mom sent that letter. We're losing the house, we're drowning in debt, and you were the only way out. So she wrote that pretty letter about forgiveness and healing, and we all played along because what choice did we have?" Ryan reaches for her, trying to pull her back, trying to make her stop talking, but Samantha shoves him away with enough force that he stumbles. "Don't touch me," she screams at him. "You're just as bad marrying me when you were still in love with her, taking Mom's money to leave town, playing the perfect husband, when we both know you'd leave me in a second if she'd have you." The ballroom has erupted into complete chaos. Guests are filming everything on their phones. Reporters are shouting questions. Someone's crying. The string quartet has stopped playing entirely, the musicians standing with their instruments hanging uselessly at their sides, staring at the spectacle. I pull out my own phone and check Twitter. We're trending nationally. #ScottFamilyScandal. The clips are already being shared, edited, commented on. News outlets are picking it up. I see headlines forming in real time. Oregon family's dark secret exposed at Christmas gala. CEO reveals shocking truth about parents who abandoned her. Christmas reconciliation turns into public nightmare. My mother has stopped trying to reach the stage. She's standing frozen in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by guests who are staring at her with expressions ranging from horror to disgust. The woman who crafted this entire event as her redemption arc, who sold tickets to witness her triumph, is watching everything she built collapse in real time. I raise the microphone one last time. The room doesn't quiet completely, but enough people stop talking to hear me. "To everyone who bought a ticket tonight," I say, my voice cutting through the chaos, "your money will be refunded in full by the end of the week. This house doesn't deserve to be saved." Then I set down the microphone, step off the stage, and walk toward the kitchen exit. Behind me, the ballroom descends into complete pandemonium. Guests shouting questions, security trying to maintain order. My mother's voice rising in some attempt at explanation that no one is listening to anymore. Samantha still sobbing somewhere in the crowd. I push through the kitchen door, needing air, needing distance, needing to be anywhere but in that room full of witnesses to the destruction I just unleashed. That's when I hear the wheelchair wheels behind me moving faster than I would have thought possible given my father's condition. "Please, Jillian." His voice is desperate, cracking with urgency. "There's something about Lily you need to know before you destroy everything." I turn slowly, looking at this man who stayed silent 20 years ago, who's stayed silent through everything since. "She's not who you think she is," he says, his good hand gripping the wheelchair armrest so hard his knuckles are white. "And if you don't listen to me right now, you're going to do something you can never take back." I stare at my father in the kitchen, his words hanging in the air between us like smoke. "She's not who you think she is." But before he can explain, before he can tell me whatever secret he's been carrying about Lily, the kitchen door bursts open and Marcus appears, phone in hand, his face tight with urgency. "We need to leave," he says. "Now. There are reporters surrounding the house, news vans blocking the driveway. This is about to get ugly." I look back at my father, but he's already retreating, wheeling himself back toward the chaos of the ballroom, leaving me with half a revelation and 1,000 new questions. Marcus hustles me out the service entrance and into a car he's already called. We drive to a hotel in Portland, checking in under a false name, and that's where I spend the next 18 hours watching my life explode across every media platform in existence. By morning, the Scott family scandal is national news. I sit in my hotel room with the curtains drawn, flipping between channels. CNN runs a segment titled, "When Forgiveness Becomes Fraud," featuring legal experts debating whether my mother could face criminal charges. Fox News has a panel discussion where a conservative commentator calls me ungrateful and accuses me of destroying the sanctity of family for publicity. MSNBC interviews a family law attorney who praises my courage in exposing elder abuse and financial fraud. The public is viciously divided. My company email, my social media accounts, even my personal cell phone that somehow got leaked. Everything explodes with messages. Interview requests from every major network. Book deal offers from 3 different publishers. A Netflix documentary producer wants to option my story. Women's advocacy groups hail me as a hero for speaking truth about family dysfunction. But there are also threats, ugly messages telling me I'm a horrible daughter, that I'll burn in hell for humiliating my stroke victim father on camera, that successful women like me are what's wrong with America. Marcus fields hundreds of calls, his laptop open on the hotel desk, sorting through the deluge while I sit on the bed watching myself become a national talking point. For the first time in years, I feel vulnerable, exposed. The armor I built so carefully over 20 years has cracked, and I'm not sure how to seal it back up. "You need to control the narrative," Marcus says on the second morning, setting down his phone. "Right now, everyone's writing their own version of your story. You need to tell them what this is really about." So I do. I schedule a press conference at the Portland Marriott, and at 2 o'clock that afternoon I stand in front of 50 reporters and twice as many cameras and make an announcement that has nothing to do with revenge. I'm establishing the Silent Daughters Foundation. I say, reading from notes I wrote at 4 in the morning when sleep wouldn't come. A nonprofit organization providing legal aid, emergency housing, and therapy services for young women estranged from their families due to abuse, manipulation, or rejection. I look up from my notes, meeting the eyes of the reporters. I had resources when I was abandoned at 17. I had savings from my job, I had my car, I had the education and determination to build something from nothing. Most young women in similar situations don't have those advantages. This foundation will ensure that no 17-year-old girl has to stand in the snow wondering if she's worthy of love ever again. The questions that follow are gentler, more thoughtful. The narrative shifts before my eyes. I'm no longer just the vengeful daughter exposing family secrets. I'm a survivor creating systemic change, turning personal trauma into collective healing. By that evening, the foundation has raised $500,000. Donations pour in from across the country, small amounts from people who've experienced family estrangement, larger checks from women's advocacy organizations, corporate matching programs from tech companies in Seattle. I'm back in my hotel room reviewing the flood of applications from young women requesting assistance when an email arrives. No sender name, just an encrypted address. The subject line stops my heart. The truth about Lily. My hands shake as I open it. The message is brief, clinical, devastating. Your father tried to tell you. I can't watch this anymore. Lily Thompson is not Samantha's biological daughter. The embryo was created using your eggs harvested without your knowledge in 2014. They stole your daughter and made you believe she was never yours. Check Seattle Grace Hospital records patient ID number SG 2014-8847. I was the nurse. I've kept silent for 10 years. I'm sorry. The phone slips from my fingers, clattering onto the hotel carpet. I can't breathe, can't think, can't process what I just read. Those eyes. Lily's eyes that looked exactly like mine. The resemblance that went beyond genetics. My father's guilt-stricken expression when he looked at her. They didn't just steal my childhood, my identity, my first love. They stole my child. I don't remember picking up the phone again. Don't remember dialing Marcus's number. But suddenly, he's there bursting into my room, and I'm handing him my phone with shaking hands. He reads the email once, twice, his face going pale. Book the next flight to Seattle. I hear myself say, my voice coming from somewhere far away. And find me the best DNA testing lab in the Pacific Northwest. If what I just read is true, they didn't just steal my childhood, they stole my child. I drive back to Oregon in a rental car, Marcus beside me, reading through hospital records he's somehow managed to obtain through contacts I don't ask about. The nurse's email led us to Seattle Grace Hospital to a patient file that should have been sealed, but wasn't, to medical procedures dated August 2014, that make my stomach turn. But I need to hear it from him. I need my father to look me in the eye and tell me what they did. The hospice facility is a low brick building on the outskirts of Ashford, the kind of place people go when hospitals can't do anything more. A nurse tells me Robert Scott was admitted 2 days ago after collapsing at home following the gala. The stress triggered a second massive stroke. The damage is extensive. They're keeping him comfortable, but the doctors say he has days, maybe a week at most. I find him in a private room at the end of a quiet hallway. He's propped up in bed, oxygen tubes in his nose monitors beeping softly beside him. When he sees me in the doorway, something crosses his face that looks like relief mixed with terror. I'm glad you came. He whispers, his voice even weaker than it was at the house. I've been carrying this secret like a stone for 11 years. I pull a chair close to his bed and sit down, folding my hands in my lap to keep them from shaking. Tell me about 2014. I say, my voice steady, despite the trembling in my chest. Tell me what you did to me. He closes his eyes, tears leaking from the corners and running down into the pillow. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. Your mother said it was the only solution. Start from the beginning, I say. He takes a rattling breath. Samantha's fertility treatments failed. Years of trying, tens of thousands of dollars, and nothing worked. Your mother became obsessed with having a grandchild, with continuing the Scott bloodline. She kept saying we'd already lost one daughter, we couldn't lose the chance for grandchildren too. I dig my fingernails into my palms, focusing on the physical pain to keep myself grounded. When your company was featured in that Seattle Business Journal in early 2014, your mother saw it as a sign. She tracked you down, found out where you lived, where you worked. She and Samantha flew to Seattle in August. They sent you a letter about wanting to reconcile, asked to meet for dinner. My breath catches. I remember that. A handwritten letter on my mother's stationery arriving at my office in Seattle. An olive branch after 9 years of silence. I was 26 years old, successful but still carrying the wound of abandonment. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me was desperate to believe they'd changed. They took you to dinner at a restaurant in downtown Seattle, my father continues. Expensive place, private booth. Your mother ordered wine, insisted on a toast to new beginnings. But she'd put something in your glass. Rohypnol, we found out later. You became disoriented, confused. They told the restaurant staff you'd had too much to drink, that they needed to get you somewhere safe to sleep it off. My vision blurs at the edges. I force myself to keep listening. They drove you to a private medical clinic in Tacoma, a place that does offshore procedures, medical tourism, fertility treatments that aren't exactly legal in the US. No questions asked if you pay in cash. His voice breaks completely. While you were unconscious, they performed an egg retrieval, harvested multiple eggs. Your mother had arranged everything in advance with the clinic. I can't speak, can't move, can't process what I'm hearing. They fertilized your eggs with Ryan's sperm. He says each word seeming to cost him something. He'd saved a sample years ago, back when he and Samantha first started trying. They created embryos and implanted one in Samantha. 9 months later, Lily was born. The room spins. I grip the arms of the chair to keep from falling. You took my eggs, I whisper. You stole my biological material, created a child without my knowledge or consent. Let Samantha raise her, as if I can't finish the sentence. I found out 3 months into Samantha's pregnancy, my father says. Your mother showed me the medical records, proud of what she'd accomplished. I was horrified. I threatened to go to the police to tell you everything. But you didn't. She showed me what she'd been building for years, forged documents with my signature, fake emails, evidence of financial fraud that she could use to send me to prison for 20 years. She said, choose your freedom or Jillian's eggs. The damage is already done anyway. He chose silence. He chose himself. He watched Lily grow up for 10 years, knowing she was my biological daughter, knowing I was building my empire in Seattle, completely unaware that I had a child stolen from my unconscious body and raised by the people who'd already destroyed me once. I failed you twice, he whispers. When you were 17, and again when you were 26. I'm sorry isn't enough. I know that. But I don't have anything else to give you. I stand slowly, my legs unsteady. I look down at this dying man who had 2 chances to choose me, and chose himself both times. You're right, I say, my voice hollow. Sorry isn't enough. I pull a folded document from my bag, one that Marcus and I prepared on the drive here with my attorney on speakerphone. But you can still help me. Sign this affidavit, testify to everything you just told me. Every detail about the egg theft, the drugging the clinic, and Tacoma mother's blackmail. I place the document on his bed table along with a pen. Or I walk away right now and let you die with that stone still crushing your chest. He signs. His hand shakes so badly the signature is barely legible, but it's legal. It's witnessed by the hospice nurse I brought in, and it's notarized within the hour. I leave my father's room with a document that will destroy what's left of my family, and I feel nothing but cold determination. Back in Seattle, I contact Elena Rodriguez using the encrypted email address she provided. We meet at a coffee shop in Capitol Hill, both of us wearing sunglasses indoors like we're in a spy movie. She's in her 50s, gray-haired with the kind of tired eyes that come from carrying secrets too heavy to hold. I kept copies of everything, she tells me, sliding a manila envelope across the table. I knew it was wrong. The moment I saw those consent forms with signatures that didn't match the handwriting on your intake paperwork, I knew something wasn't right. But the clinic paid well and I had student loans, and I told myself it wasn't my business. Inside the envelope are procedure notes from August 2014, clinical and detailed. Egg retrieval performed on patient JS14, viable eggs harvested, patient sedated throughout procedure with midazolam and fentanyl. Consent forms with my forged signature. Payment receipts showing Margaret Scott paid $75,000 in cash. Notes indicating the clinic has since been shut down by the Washington State Medical Board for ethics violations. Why come forward now? I ask. Because I watched that live stream, Elena says quietly. I saw what your mother did to you when you were 17, and I realized I'd helped her do it again when you were 26. I can't fix it, but I can at least tell the truth. The DNA test takes 48 hours. I use a sample from Lily's hairbrush that I took during my visit to the Scott estate, along with my own cheek swab. Marcus sits with me in my office when the results arrive via secure email, and I make him open them because my hands won't stop shaking. He reads in silence, then looks up at me with an expression I've never seen on his face before. 99.9% probability of maternal relationship, he says softly. Jillian, she's your daughter. The lab report confirms what I already knew in my bones the moment I saw Lily's eyes. She's mine. Biologically, genetically, undeniably mine. A child I didn't know I had created from my body without my knowledge raised by the people who destroyed me. I meet with Catherine Wu the next morning in her downtown office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. She's 45, brilliant, and known for taking on impossible family law cases. This is complicated, she says after reviewing all the evidence. The assault and medical fraud occurred in 2014, 11 years ago. Washington's statute of limitations for assault is 3 years, which means criminal prosecution is normally time-barred. Normally. There's something called the discovery rule, Catherine explains. The statute of limitations begins when the victim discovers the crime, not when it occurred. Since you only learned about this in 2025, we can argue the clock just started. It's not guaranteed, but we have a strong case for criminal charges. And custody... Catherine's expression becomes even more serious. That's the harder battle. Legally, Samantha is listed as Lily's birth mother on all official documents. She's raised her for 10 years. Proving biological maternity doesn't automatically grant you parental rights, especially when a child has established bonds with her legal parents. The courts prioritize the child's best interests, which usually means maintaining stability. So they steal my child and get to keep her because they've been raising her? It's not fair, Catherine says. But family law rarely is. We'll fight for your rights, but you need to be prepared that this could take years, and the outcome is uncertain. I arrange a meeting with my mother at Catherine's office 3 days later. Neutral territory cameras recording everything, witnesses present. Margaret arrives in a black suit looking composed and defiant, as if she's the one who's been wronged. I lay out the evidence across the conference table like playing cards in a winning hand. DNA results, medical records from the Tacoma clinic, Elena Rodriguez's testimony, my father's signed affidavit detailing everything. You didn't just abandon me, I say, my voice steady as stone. You harvested my body like I was livestock. You drugged me, violated me, stole my biological material. You created a child from my eggs and raised her as Samantha's trophy, while I built an empire completely unaware I was a mother. Margaret doesn't flinch, doesn't deny anything. She leans back in her chair, eerily calm, and says words that will haunt me for the rest of my life. Samantha deserved a child. You were focused on building your career. I made the choice that benefited everyone. The sociopathic rationalization is breathtaking in its cruelty. In her mind, stealing my eggs while I was unconscious was a practical solution to a family problem. I was the resource, Samantha was the deserving recipient, and my consent was irrelevant because I wouldn't have agreed anyway. I slide a document across the table. Sign this, relinquish all parental claims to Lily, transfer the Scott estate deed to my name, admit on record to forgery, fraud, and medical battery. Do this and I'll consider letting you avoid prison. Margaret picks up the pen, examines the document, and then does something I don't expect. She smiles, cold, calculating, triumphant. You think you've won, she says, but you haven't met Ethan yet. I'm still processing my mother's cryptic warning about Ethan when he appears at my office that same evening, walking past my assistant like he owns the building. He's 58, silver-haired, wearing a suit that costs more than most people's monthly rent, and radiating the kind of calculated menace that comes from years of getting away with things. Jillian Scott, he says, extending his hand with practiced charm. Ethan Cole, I'm your mother's financial advisor and partner. We've been working together since 2010. I don't shake his hand. The Ethan she was talking to on the phone, the one helping her plot how to extort me. His smile doesn't waver. I prefer to think of it as strategic financial planning. Your mother came to me with complex situations over the years, and I provided solutions. Solutions like forging mortgage documents in my name, among other things. He sits in the chair across from my desk without being invited, crossing his legs with infuriating ease. The mortgage restructuring was my idea, yes, as was the more creative solution to Samantha's fertility issues in 2014. Your mother was desperate to secure a grandchild to continue the family line. I connected her with the medical facility in Tacoma that could make that happen discreetly. The casual way he admits to orchestrating the theft of my eggs makes my vision blur red at the edges. But I'm not here to discuss the past, Ethan continues smoothly. I'm here to discuss the future, specifically your future if you continue down this path of revenge against your mother. He pulls a manila folder from his briefcase and slides it across my desk. I open it to find financial records, transaction histories, corporate filings. It takes me a moment to understand what I'm looking at, and when I do, my blood runs cold. The Scott Family Hope Foundation, Ethan says. The charity your mother founded, which you've been so generously supporting for years. $5,000 a month every month for over a decade. Do you know what that foundation actually does? I stare at the documents showing money flowing through the foundation in complex patterns amounts that don't match the modest charitable work my mother claimed to be doing. It launders money, Ethan says. Over $3 million from my investment management business cleaned through your mother's charity and redistributed to offshore accounts. And you, Jillian Scott, have been funding it. Your donations have been commingled with the fraudulent funds. You're technically complicit in a federal money laundering operation. The trap snaps closed around me with elegant precision. If you pursue criminal charges against Margaret, Ethan continues, his voice still calm and reasonable, I'll ensure federal investigators receive anonymous tips about your involvement. Your company will be investigated. Your assets will be frozen pending the investigation. Your reputation as a self-made success story will be destroyed when the media learns you've been funding criminal enterprise. Everything you've built over 20 years will collapse. He stands buttoning his suit jacket. It's an unfortunate situation, but you have a choice. Drop the charges against your mother, sign the settlement agreement, giving her control of the family trust, and walk away. Or push forward and watch your empire burn while trying to prove you were an unwitting accomplice rather than a co-conspirator. You're blackmailing me. I'm presenting you with options and their natural consequences. His smile is cold professional. You have 48 hours to decide. Choose wisely, Miss Scott. He walks out, leaving the folder on my desk like a ticking bomb. The moment the elevator doors close behind him, I'm on the phone with Marcus. I need everything on Ethan Cole: financials, properties, business associates, family, communications, parking tickets, everything. I want to know what brand of toothpaste he uses and where he was on the night of his high school prom. Deploy the entire security team. On it, Marcus says, and I hear the familiar click of his keyboard already working. 6 hours later, my conference room looks like a war room. Marcus has assembled a team of investigators, forensic accountants, and corporate researchers. The walls are covered with printouts, timelines, financial flowcharts, and the picture that emerges is even uglier than I expected. Ethan Cole isn't just my mother's financial advisor. He's been her lover since 2008, carrying on an affair for 17 years while my father deteriorated from his stroke, probably accelerating his decline with the stress of knowing his wife had moved on while he was still alive. The money laundering operation is extensive and sophisticated. Shell companies in Delaware and Nevada, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland, defrauded investors across Washington, Oregon, and California who put money into Ethan's investment management firm believing it was legitimate. Over $15 million that Ethan has been systematically stealing and cleaning through various channels, including my mother's charity. Margaret has been a willing accomplice motivated by greed and whatever twisted affection she feels for this man. The charity she founded supposedly to help families in need has been nothing but a front, a way to legitimize dirty money while maintaining her social standing in Ashford. Here's the interesting part, Marcus says around midnight, pulling up a new file on the screen. Ethan has a daughter. Hannah Cole, 26 years old, graduated from Georgetown Law. She works for the Securities and Exchange Commission in their enforcement division investigating financial fraud. I look up from the financial documents I've been reviewing. Does she know about her father? No indication that she has any idea. She's built her career on prosecuting exactly the kind of crimes he's been committing. Her social media is full of posts about justice and accountability. She even gave a TED Talk last year about how white-collar criminals destroy lives and rarely face consequences. Marcus pulls up Hannah Cole's LinkedIn profile, her TED Talk, her published articles on financial crime. She's brilliant, idealistic, everything her father pretends to be. If we approach her with evidence, Marcus says slowly, letting the implications hang in the air. I smile for the first time in hours, feeling the pieces of a new strategy falling into place. Then we don't just take down my mother, we dismantle his entire empire. I meet Hannah Cole 3 days later at a small coffee shop in Portland's Pearl District, far enough from both Seattle and Ashford that we're unlikely to be recognized. She arrives exactly on time, dressed in a conservative navy suit, her briefcase suggesting she came straight from work. She has her father's sharp features, but none of his calculated cruelty, and when she sits across from me, I see the kind of idealism that hasn't been beaten out of her yet. "Thank you for meeting me," I say, sliding a slim folder across the table. "I know this must seem strange, but I have information about financial crimes that fall under SEC jurisdiction. I'm bringing this to you because you're known for your integrity." Hannah opens the folder carefully, scanning the documents I've sanitized to remove any indication of how I obtained them. Financial records showing money moving through the Scott Family Hope Foundation in patterns that scream money laundering. Investment fraud across 3 states. Shell companies and offshore accounts. "Where did you get this?" she asks, her voice professional, but her hands trembling slightly. "I can't reveal my sources, but everything in that folder can be independently verified through proper legal channels. Your father has been using nonprofit foundations to clean money from investment fraud. I'm giving you this because you have the authority to investigate properly, and because I believe you care about justice more than protecting family." She's quiet for a long moment, staring at the documents. When she looks up, her eyes are wet, but her jaw is set. If my father is dirty, he deserves to face consequences. That's what I've built my career on. I won't make exceptions just because we share DNA. Within 48 hours, Hannah Cole initiates a formal SEC investigation into Ethan Cole Financial Management. She's operating completely independently now, following proper legal protocols, and there's nothing Ethan can do to stop her without revealing his own guilt. While federal investigators build their case, I launch a coordinated media campaign. My PR team secures an exclusive interview with a major network, and I sit in a studio facing a sympathetic journalist and tell my story not as the vengeful CEO, but as a victim of reproductive coercion. In 2014, I woke up in a hospital with gaps in my memory. I say, my voice steady and clear. I was told I'd had a medical emergency, that I'd had too much to drink. It wasn't until this year that I discovered the truth. My mother and sister had drugged me and taken me to a facility where my eggs were harvested without my knowledge or consent. They used my biological material to create a child I never knew existed. The interview is devastating in its simplicity. Elena Rodriguez provides corroborating testimony. The closure of the Tacoma clinic adds credibility. Public opinion shifts dramatically. I'm no longer the daughter who destroyed her family on live television. I'm a victim of bodily autonomy violation. Support for the Silent Daughters Foundation explodes. Donations triple. Politicians in 3 states announce legislation targeting reproductive coercion. Then my investigators deliver the final blow. Medical records showing Margaret has been faking terminal cancer since 2022, using a fabricated diagnosis to gather sympathy donations that went straight into Ethan's money laundering operation. A corrupt physician, now delicensed, provided false documentation. I leak the information to investigative journalists who've been following the story. The expose runs on the front page: Oregon mother faked cancer while stealing daughter's biological child. The revelation is complete devastation. Even Margaret's staunchest defenders abandon her. Charitable organizations demand refunds. The Scott family name becomes toxic. That's when Margaret makes her most desperate move. Catherine Wu calls me at 6 a.m, her voice tight with urgency. Your mother just filed for emergency custody of Lily. She's claiming you're an unstable woman seeking to kidnap a child you have no legal relationship with. The hearing is set for 5 days from now. The courtroom is packed beyond capacity. Media crews line the back wall, activists hold signs about reproductive rights outside, and legal observers fill every available seat. This emergency custody hearing has become a national spectacle, and I sit at the plaintiff's table feeling exposed in ways that 20 years of building armor couldn't prevent. Margaret's attorney, a shark in an expensive suit, argues that biology doesn't equal parenthood. Lily Thompson has known Samantha Scott as her mother for 10 years. He says, his voice measured and reasonable. She has a stable home, loving parents, and established life. Removing her from that environment would be traumatic, regardless of the biological circumstances of her conception. Ms. Scott is asking this court to uproot a child's entire world based on genetics alone. Catherine Wu stands, and her rebuttal is surgical. This isn't about genetics, Your Honor. This is about fraud, coercion, and criminal conspiracy. Ms. Jillian Scott's eggs were harvested without her knowledge or consent while she was drugged and incapacitated. A child was created from her biological material through criminal means. The question isn't whether biology matters, it's whether crimes committed to create a family can be legally sanctioned by allowing the perpetrators to keep what they stole. Judge Patricia Morrison, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and no patience for nonsense, looks profoundly uncomfortable. This court is painfully aware that this case involves both family law and criminal matters that would be better addressed in separate proceedings. However, given the emergency petition, we'll hear testimony. Samantha takes the stand first, and I watch my sister crumble in real time. Her hands shake. Her voice breaks. And when Catherine asks if she knew the eggs used to conceive Lily belonged to me, she dissolves into tears. Yes, she whispers. I knew. Mom told me it was the only way, that Jillian didn't want children anyway, that she was too focused on her career to care. I didn't think it mattered because Jillian wasn't going to be a mother. I thought I was just using biological material that would otherwise go to waste. The rationalization is breathtaking in its delusion. Ryan testifies next, and his testimony is quieter, but no less damning. He admits that Margaret threatened to expose his family's financial problems if he didn't cooperate with the plan. She had documentation of tax issues. My father's business had nothing criminal but enough to cause problems. She said if I didn't provide the sperm sample, she'd make sure we lost everything. Each testimony builds a picture of systematic manipulation of a family matriarch who orchestrated crimes with the precision of a military operation. Then Margaret takes the stand, and I watch her commit perjury with the same elegant composure she's displayed her entire life. I had no knowledge of any egg theft, she says, her voice steady and convincing. My daughter Samantha came to me in 2014 saying she'd arranged for fertility treatment through a friend's recommendation. I assumed everything was legal and consensual. If crimes were committed, they were committed without my knowledge or involvement. She's throwing Samantha under the bus. Her own daughter, the one she claimed to be protecting all these years, is being sacrificed to save Margaret's own skin. I glance at Samantha in the gallery and see the exact moment something breaks inside her. She's staring at our mother with an expression of complete betrayal, tears streaming silently down her face, as she realizes that maternal love was always conditional, always transactional. During the recess, Samantha approaches Catherine with a flash drive clutched in her shaking hand. "This is everything," she says, her voice hollow and defeated. Financial records showing Mom paid for the procedure. Text messages between Mom and Ethan planning it for months. Recordings of Mom admitting what she did, bragging about how clever the plan was. I kept copies because some part of me always knew this day would come. She looks at me directly for the first time. I can't do this anymore. My daughter deserves to know the truth, even if it destroys me. The evidence is devastating. Catherine presents it methodically: text messages, financial transfers, audio recordings. Margaret's carefully constructed lies collapse under the weight of her own daughter's testimony. Judge Morrison's verdict comes 2 hours later. Lily will remain temporarily with Samantha and Ryan under supervised visitation while criminal investigations proceed, but I'm granted immediate rights to establish a relationship with my biological daughter. It's legal recognition of my maternity, but not the full custody I wanted. Mrs. Margaret Scott, the judge says, her voice hard as stone, you are found in contempt of court for perjury. Bailiff, take her into custody pending criminal investigation. I watch my mother being led away in handcuffs, her elegant composure finally cracking, and I feel absolutely nothing. No triumph, no vindication, no sense of justice served, just exhausting emptiness. 20 years I spent building toward this moment. 20 years proving I was strong enough, successful enough, powerful enough to make them regret what they did to me. And now that I've won, now that my mother is in handcuffs, and my sister has betrayed her, and the truth is exposed for the world to see, all I feel is tired. Revenge doesn't heal wounds. It just exposes them. I walk out of the courthouse into winter rain, and Marcus finds me sitting alone on a bench, letting the water soak through my expensive suit. You won, Jill, he says gently, sitting beside me. Why do you look like you lost? I stare at my hands, at the manicured nails and designer watch, and all the markers of success I've accumulated like armor. Because winning was supposed to feel different. But I'm still that girl standing in the snow wondering why she wasn't enough. The media storm that follows the custody hearing is worse than I anticipated. For every supporter who praises my courage, there are 10 critics who tear me apart. Conservative commentators accuse me of weaponizing victimhood, of destroying a sick elderly woman for publicity. Op-eds question whether someone who publicly humiliates the only family a child has ever known is truly fit to be a parent. The foundation's email inbox fills with threatening messages, calling me a narcissist, accusing me of using trauma for profit, claiming I'm no better than the mother I've exposed. I try to push through it to maintain the armor I've built over 20 years. The foundation hosts a major fundraising gala in Seattle. 800 donors gathered to celebrate the work we've done supporting estranged young women. I'm supposed to give a speech about resilience, about turning pain into purpose, about building something meaningful from the ruins of trauma. I make it halfway through before my vision starts to narrow. The words on my note card blur. My chest tightens until I can't draw breath. The room spins, 800 faces staring at me expectantly while I stand frozen on stage, drowning in front of an audience. Security escorts me off as flashbulbs pop and phones record my collapse. By morning, the photos are everywhere. Revenge Empire Crumbles CEO has breakdown at own event. The woman who exposed her family's darkest secrets can't handle the consequences of her own actions. I'm in my hotel room, curtains drawn, phone turned off, when Marcus bursts in without knocking. It's Samantha, he says, his face pale. Ryan just called. She overdosed on sleeping pills. They've got her at Providence Memorial ICU. I don't remember the drive to the hospital. I tell myself I'm going for Lily, not for Samantha, because forgiveness isn't something I'm capable of yet. But when I see that little girl sitting in the ICU waiting room, small and terrified, with Ryan's jacket draped over her shoulders, something cracks in my chest. Ryan looks up when I approach, his face haggard. She left a note, said she couldn't live with what she'd done, that Lily deserved better than a mother built on lies. The nurse allows me into Samantha's room. My sister lies in the hospital bed tubes and monitors tracking the life they've managed to save, and she looks broken in a way that mirrors my own fracture. Her eyes are hollow, her skin pale, and when she sees me, fresh tears spill down her cheeks. I'm sorry I stole your daughter, she whispers, her voice raw and broken. But I loved her. God, I loved her like she was mine. I loved being her mother, and I don't know how to give her back. I stand beside the bed looking at this woman who participated in one of the worst violations of my life, and I see something I've refused to acknowledge until now. Samantha is also a victim of Margaret's manipulation. She was groomed from birth to be the perfect daughter, told her worth depended on meeting impossible standards, raised to believe that love was transactional and conditional. She didn't steal my eggs because she was evil. She stole them because she'd been taught that her value required producing a grandchild, and she was willing to commit crimes to earn the approval that was always just out of reach. You don't have to give her back, I say quietly. She's not property. She's a person who loves you because you raised her. Samantha sobs, the kind of deep shaking cries that come from years of holding everything in. I hear small footsteps behind me and turn to find Lily standing in the doorway, having slipped past the nurses. She's 10 years old, wearing jeans and a unicorn sweater, and she's staring at me with my own eyes. Are you my real mom? She asks with the heartbreaking directness that only children possess. I kneel to her level, so we're eye to eye. Biologically, yes. Logically, your body was made from my eggs and your dad's sperm, but Samantha raised you, took care of you, loved you every day of your life. Biology doesn't erase that. Lily processes this information with the careful consideration of someone much older than 10. Can I have 2 moms? The question breaks something open in my chest that I've kept locked for 20 years. I've been so focused on justice, on winning, on being right, on proving that I was wronged and deserved vindication. But standing here in this hospital room with a child who's been caught in the crossfire of adult cruelty, I realize I've been fighting the wrong battle. Yes, I whisper. I think you can. Lily takes my hand, her small fingers gripping tight with surprising strength. Then can you help me save my other mom? Because I think she's as lost as you were when you were 17. And in that moment, staring at this child who shouldn't exist, who was created through violation but raised with love, who's asking me to be better than my pain, I understand something fundamental. Revenge doesn't heal wounds. It just exposes them. But breaking the cycle, that's something different. That's choosing to be more than what was done to you. Yes, I say again, squeezing her hand. I can help. Samantha spends 3 weeks in psychiatric care, and during that time, I receive a letter forwarded from Ryan. The envelope is decorated with stickers of unicorns and rainbows, addressed in the careful block letters of a child who's trying very hard to get every word right. Inside, Lily's handwriting covers 2 pages of lined notebook paper, each sentence clearly labored over, some words crossed out and rewritten. Dear Jillian, Aunt Sam told me what Grandma did was wrong, but she also said people do bad things when they're scared. I'm scared too. I'm scared everyone I love is going to keep hurting each other. Please forgive us so we can breathe again. The simplicity of it breaks me in ways that all the legal battles and media storms couldn't. A 10-year-old child asking for permission to breathe, caught between the adults who created her through violation and raised her with love. Tucked into the letter is a drawing on construction paper, 3 women holding hands under a Christmas tree decorated with ornaments. Each figure is labeled in Lily's careful writing, Mom Sam, Mom Jillian, and me. We're all smiling in the drawing, all connected, all belonging to each other in the way that only a child could imagine possible. I hang the drawing in my office that afternoon, the first personal item I've displayed in the 2 decades since I built this empire. Marcus walks in, sees it on the wall beside my business awards, and doesn't say anything. He just nods, understanding what it means that I'm finally allowing something human into this carefully constructed fortress. 3 days after the custody hearing, I get the call that my father has died. The hospice nurse tells me he passed peacefully in his sleep and that he left something for me. When I arrive to collect his belongings, she hands me a thumb drive. He recorded this 2 days ago, she says. He wanted to make sure you received it. I watch the video alone in my hotel room. My father sits propped up in his hospice bed, the left side of his face drooping from stroke damage, but his eyes are clear and focused on the camera. I'm not asking for forgiveness. He says his words slow and deliberate. I don't deserve it, but I can give you something I should have given you 30 years ago. The truth about where you came from. He tells me about Sarah and Michael Chen, my biological parents, who died in a car accident in 1995 when I was 8 years old. Your mother was a middle school English teacher. Your father played saxophone in a jazz band and taught music lessons. By all accounts, they were good people who loved their daughter very much. They would have been proud of who you became. He gives me the name of my biological aunt, Linda Chen, still living in San Jose, California. He tells me there's a box of belongings in the hospice storage that the Scotts kept for 30 years, but never gave me photos, documents, items that belonged to the Chens. You deserve to know where you came from, he says, his voice breaking. I'm sorry we stole that from you too. The video ends with him staring into the camera, tears running down his face, and I realize this is the closest to an apology I'll ever receive from him. It's not enough. It will never be enough. But it's something. When I go to collect his hospice belongings, I find a key taped inside his Bible with a note in his shaky handwriting. For Jillian, when you're ready to understand. The key opens a locked room in the Scott Estate's attic that I never knew existed. I have to get permission from the bank that now owns the foreclosed property, have to explain who I am and why I need access. When I finally climb those attic stairs and unlock the door, I find 30 years of my erased life. Boxes of my childhood artwork that Margaret claimed were thrown away. Report cards showing straight A's. Awards from spelling bees and science fairs. Photos of me that had been cut from family albums carefully preserved in this secret space. Everything that proved I existed, that I mattered, that I was once loved, hidden away like contraband. And buried beneath it all in a locked cedar chest, I find Margaret's personal diary. Leather-bound journals spanning from 1983 to 2024, her elegant handwriting filling page after page with thoughts she never intended anyone to read. I sit on the dusty attic floor and begin at the beginning, and what I discover is a complexity I wasn't prepared for. The early entries are from a young woman who grew up in crushing poverty in rural Kentucky, who went hungry more nights than not, who worked her way through college on scholarships and sheer determination. She writes about meeting Robert, about the terror of almost losing him to another woman, about the desperate need to secure her place in a world that could snatch everything away without warning. The entries about my birth in 1987 are filled with anxiety. She doesn't look like us. Dark hair, dark eyes. The nurses keep saying she's beautiful, but I can't shake the feeling that something's wrong. What if she's not ours? What if there was a mistake? The paranoia was there from the beginning, seeds planted that would grow into the cruelty that destroyed us both. The entries from 2004, when the blood tests revealed the truth, are devastating in their cold calculation. She writes about the choice she faced. Keep the daughter who wasn't biologically hers, or focus everything on Samantha. Resources are limited. Love is limited. I have to choose. Emma is dead. We'll never get her back. But we have Samantha, our real daughter, and she needs everything we can give her. Jillian is strong. She'll survive. Samantha is fragile. She needs protection. I read through the fabrication of the theft, through the planning of my exile, through the years of her convincing herself she'd made the right choice. And then I reached the final entry dated 1 week before she sent that reunion invitation that brought me back to Ashford. I watched her on television today. Jillian. She's successful, powerful, everything I taught her to be. But there's something missing in her eyes. The same thing that's missing in mine. I hoped my strength would be her lesson, not her wound. But I see now I didn't make her strong. I made her alone. Just like me. I sit in that attic for hours reading through decades of my mother's private thoughts, and the woman who emerges from these pages is more complex and more damaged than I ever imagined. The early entries from the 1980s reveal a Margaret I never knew, a young woman who grew up as the eldest of 7 children in rural Kentucky, in a house where hunger was a constant companion, and winter meant choosing between heat and food. She writes about wearing the same dress to school for weeks, about the shame of accepting charity from church ladies, about watching her younger siblings cry from empty stomachs while their father drank away what little money they had. She clawed her way out through sheer determination, working 3 jobs to put herself through community college, transferring to a state university, on scholarships, meeting Robert at a campus library, and seeing in him a ticket to the middle-class stability she'd been desperately seeking. The entries about their early marriage are filled with terror, barely contained terror, that it would all be taken away, that she'd slip back into the poverty that had defined her childhood. That one wrong move would send her tumbling back into hunger and shame. When baby Jillian was brought home from the hospital in 1987, Margaret's entries are already tinged with unease. She doesn't look like me. Dark hair, dark eyes, nothing like Robert's family or mine. The nurses keep telling me she's beautiful, but I can't shake this feeling. I look at her and see a stranger. What if she's not ours? What if there was a mistake? The seed of rejection was planted from my first breath, long before any blood test confirmed her paranoid suspicions. She spent 17 years looking at me and feeling wrong, and when the medical tests in 2004 finally validated that instinct, it gave her permission to act on feelings she'd been harboring since I was born. The entries from 2004 to 2005 are chilling in their calculated rationality. She writes about what she calls the wrong daughter problem, how to remove me without appearing monstrous to the community she'd worked so hard to impress. She documented her planning like a business project, fabricating the theft accusation, withdrawing cash from the bank while wearing my jacket, planting the money in my room, practicing her heartbroken mother expression in the mirror, until it looked genuine enough to convince everyone, including herself. "I'm not a monster," she wrote in November 2005. "I'm making an impossible choice with limited resources. Samantha is mine by blood. Jillian is not. Biology matters, and pretending it doesn't is a luxury I can't afford. We lost Emma. We'll never get her back. But we have Samantha, and she deserves everything we can give her without the burden of dividing it with a stranger." She convinced herself that exiling me was an act of tough love, that I was strong enough to survive it, that hardship would forge me into something powerful. "She's smart and resilient," Margaret wrote. "She'll survive this. It might even make her stronger. Samantha is fragile. She needs protection, needs to be the center of our world without competition. This is the merciful choice for everyone." The entries about 2014 and the egg theft are perhaps the most disturbing, because they reveal a woman who genuinely believed she was solving problems with ruthless efficiency. Samantha needs a child to be complete as a woman. Jillian will never be a mother, she's too consumed by career ambition to want children. Ryan's genetics are good, proven to mix well with our family line. This is practical resource allocation, using biological material that would otherwise go to waste. She documented the planning with business-like precision, researching fertility clinics that operated in legal gray areas, calculating costs, working with Ethan to arrange the Tacoma facility, perfecting the sedation dosage and timeline. There's no guilt in these pages, no moral wrestling, only satisfaction when Lily was born 9 months later. The family line continues through Samantha. "I did what I had to do. Jillian is building her empire and doesn't need the complication of motherhood. Everyone benefits from my decision." But the final entries from late 2025, after seeing me on television, show the first cracks in her certainty. "I watched Jillian on Good Morning America today. She's everything I taught her to be: strong, successful, powerful. But there's something missing in her eyes when she talks about building her company alone. The same emptiness I see in my own mirror. She didn't need us to survive. That was the point. But maybe that's the problem. I raised her to be invulnerable, to not need anyone, to value strength over connection. And now she's exactly like me, alone at the top of an empire, surrounded by success, but isolated from love. I didn't make her strong. I made her alone. I close the diary as dawn light filters through the attic window, illuminating dust motes in the air. I understand now in a way I didn't before. My mother wasn't evil in the cartoonish sense, wasn't motivated by pure malice or sadistic cruelty. She was broken in ways that broke everyone around her, twisted by childhood trauma into someone who saw love as a finite resource and survival as a zero-sum game. Understanding doesn't mean forgiveness. The crimes she committed against me are unforgivable, the violations too deep to ever be healed by comprehension alone. But maybe understanding means something else. Maybe it means freedom from the question that's haunted me for 20 years, why wasn't I enough? The answer is that it was never about being enough. It was about a damaged woman making damaged choices from a place of pathological fear. I pull out my phone and type a message to Marcus. Schedule a visit to the Women's Detention Center. It's time I spoke to my mother. Not as her victim, as her equal. 6 months pass. Spring turns to summer. Summer fades to fall, and the Silent Daughters Foundation grows from an idea born of pain into something that helps real people survive real trauma. We host our first annual summit in Seattle in early December, a 3-day event at the convention center, bringing together 500 women who've experienced family estrangement, reproductive coercion, or emotional abuse. I'm the keynote speaker, and I'm more terrified standing backstage than I've ever been closing a $50 million deal. This isn't a business presentation where I can hide behind data and strategy. This isn't a revenge plot where righteous anger can fuel my words. This is vulnerability on a scale I've never attempted, standing in front of 500 people who know exactly what it feels like to be thrown away by the people who were supposed to love you. I walk onto the stage without notes, without a script, with nothing but the truth I've spent 6 months learning to articulate. I spent 20 years proving I was worthy of love by building an empire. I begin, my voice steady, but my hands gripping the podium. I thought if I was successful enough, powerful enough, rich enough, it would somehow prove that my family was wrong about me, that I was worth keeping. I look out at the audience, at faces that mirror my own pain. But wealth doesn't heal wounds. Revenge doesn't restore what was stolen. I exposed my family's crimes on national television, watched my mother get led away in handcuffs, won custody rights to the daughter I never knew I had. And you know what? I still woke up feeling like that 17-year-old girl standing in the snow, wondering why she wasn't enough. The room is silent, 500 women holding their collective breath. The only thing that transforms pain is choosing to break the cycle, I continue. Not by becoming invulnerable, but by becoming human. Not by building walls, but by building bridges. Not by proving we don't need anyone, but by creating communities where everyone belongs.
Betrayal,
Asameds. I announce the Foundation's major initiatives: legal clinics in 15 cities, providing free representation for young women fighting family court battles, emergency housing partnerships across the Pacific Northwest, therapy programs specializing in family trauma, and a legislative campaign working with lawmakers in 5 states to strengthen protections against reproductive coercion. During the Q&A session, a young woman in the 3rd row stands, her voice shaking. How do you forgive people who don't deserve it? The question lands in my chest like a stone. I take a breath, searching for honesty instead of platitudes. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive my mother, I say. Maybe forgiveness isn't the goal. Maybe the goal is understanding that her damage doesn't have to define my future. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about them. It's about refusing to let their worst choices become my identity. I grip the microphone tighter. Strength isn't revenge. It's clarity. It's seeing people for who they really are. Broken humans making broken choices and deciding you're going to build something good from something broken anyway. Not because they deserve your grace, but because you deserve to be free. The audience erupts in applause, and I see tears on faces throughout the room. Later journalists will frame this as my redemption arc, the moment I transformed from vengeful daughter to inspirational survivor. But I know the truth. I'm not redeemed. I'm just finally learning to be human instead of perfect, to be vulnerable instead of invincible. The Foundation's hotline receives 10,000 calls in the week following the summit. That evening, back in my hotel room, I find an email from Samantha. She's been in an outpatient rehabilitation program for 5 months, working through the trauma and manipulation that shaped her into someone capable of participating in the theft of my eggs. I watched your keynote online, she writes. You're right about breaking cycles. I'm working with therapists to understand how mom's manipulation warped me into someone I don't recognize. I participated in violating you because I'd been taught that my worth depended on producing a grandchild, and I was willing to commit crimes to earn approval that was always conditional. She continues, I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know something Dad told me before he died. Your biological mother's maiden name was Chen. When Lily was born, I gave her the middle name Chen, Lily Chen Thompson. I wanted her to carry your real family's name, even though I couldn't tell you why at the time. Maybe some part of me knew she deserved to be connected to you. It's the first genuine apology I've received from anyone in my family. Not an excuse, not a justification, just acknowledgement of harm and a small attempt at repair. I read it 3 times, then save it in a folder I create and label simply, maybe. That evening, my phone lights up with a video call. Lily's face fills the screen, and behind her I can see Ryan's living room decorated for Christmas. Mom Jill, she says, using the name we've settled on over the past 6 months of supervised visits and careful relationship building. Mom Sam is coming home from her program next week. She asked if you could come to Christmas. Not for her, for me. Will you? I look at this child I didn't know I had at the family we're building from the ruins of trauma and violation and 20 years of separation, and I realize something fundamental has shifted inside me. Some invitations are worth accepting. Yes, I tell her. I'll be there. I drive to Ashford on Christmas Eve, but I don't go to the Scott estate. That house holds too many ghosts, too many memories soaked in betrayal. Instead, I suggest we meet at Riverside Park, the same place where Ryan first kissed me when we were 15, where I used to bring homework on sunny afternoons, where life felt simple before everything shattered. Snow is falling softly when I arrive, the kind of gentle Christmas Eve snow that belongs in movies. I see them before they see me, Lily, in a bright pink coat, building a snowman with Ryan's help, her laughter carrying across the frozen landscape. Samantha sits on a bench nearby, wrapped in a dark coat, looking fragile but present. She's 8 months sober now, her face fuller than it was in the hospital, but there's still a haunted quality to her eyes. When Lily spots my car, she runs toward me with the uncomplicated joy that only children possess, throwing herself into my arms with enough force to nearly knock me over. Mom Jill. Look, I made you a snowman. She drags me over to show me her creation, complete with stick arms and a carrot nose that's already being investigated by a curious squirrel. For the next hour, we play like normal families do. We throw snowballs, Lily's aim terrible but enthusiastic. We make snow angels lying in the powder and moving our arms and legs while staring up at the gray December sky. Ryan produces a thermos of hot chocolate from his truck, and we pass it around our breath, making clouds in the cold air. Samantha watches from the bench, not intruding, giving me space with Lily, and I'm grateful for her restraint, even as I see the longing in her face. Finally, Lily grabs both our hands, pulling us together with determination. Come on, moms, she says, using the plural so naturally it makes my throat tight. It's Christmas. We're supposed to be together. While Lily and Ryan start building what she declares will be the biggest snow fort in Oregon, Samantha and I sit on the bench together. It's the first time we've been alone since that night in the hospital when she nearly died, and the silence stretches between us like ice. I don't expect you to forgive me, Samantha says, finally staring at her gloved hands. But I need you to know that I see it now. What Mom did to both of us. She made me believe my entire worth depended on being perfect, on having the perfect family, on producing a grandchild to continue the Scott legacy. When I couldn't get pregnant after years of trying, I thought I'd failed at the only thing that mattered. Taking your eggs wasn't about hurting you. It was about not being worthless. I hear the desperation in her voice, and I recognize it because I've felt it too. That bone-deep terror that you're not enough, that you'll never be enough, that your value is conditional on meeting impossible standards. We were both her victims, I say quietly. She twisted us in different ways. Made you desperate for approval and made me desperate to prove I didn't need it. But we don't have to be her victims anymore. We talk for a long time while snow falls around us, working out the terms of something that has no legal precedent, no template to follow. Lily will know both of us as her mothers. Samantha will keep primary custody because stability matters to a child who's already been through enough confusion. But I'll have equal access, weekends, holidays, video calls, complete involvement in school events, and decisions about her life. We'll need therapy, I say, all of us, to navigate this. I know, Samantha says. I'm already working with someone who specializes in complex family dynamics. I look at her directly. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for her. She deserves better than our damage. Samantha nods, tears running down her face. She deserves better than both of us. Maybe together we can give her that. It's not forgiveness. It's not friendship. It's not reconciliation in any traditional sense. But it's a beginning, a tentative agreement to prioritize a child's well-being over our own wounds. And sometimes that's enough. As we stand to leave, Lily appears beside us, her face serious in a way that's heartbreaking on someone so young. "What about Grandma?" she asks. "Is she coming to Christmas too?" Samantha and I exchange glances, and neither of us has an answer. The question about Margaret hangs in the cold December air unanswered. Lily eventually accepts our silence and runs back to her snow fort, but the question doesn't leave. It follows me through the holidays, through the new year, through the legal proceedings that finally conclude in late January. In the settlement of my father's estate and Margaret's criminal case, the Scott family home is awarded to me as restitution for the forged mortgage and years of financial fraud. The bank that foreclosed releases the property to me with an apology and a stack of paperwork. I stand in the driveway looking at the Victorian house that shaped and destroyed me, and I have a choice to make. I could sell it, pocket the money, let someone else deal with the ghosts. I could demolish it, erase it from existence like my mother tried to erase me. Instead, I announce a different plan at a press conference in Portland, transforming the Scott estate into the House of Second Chances, a residential program for young women aging out of foster care or escaping abusive family situations. The renovation takes 3 months. Architects tear down walls that held secrets, opening up dark spaces into light-filled communal areas. The study where my mother plotted becomes a library. The bedroom where I was framed becomes a counseling center. The dining room where I was erased becomes a kitchen where residents will learn to cook together, to share meals, to build the family bonds that were stolen from them. The first residents move in on New Year's Day 2026, 8 young women between 18 and 22, each carrying trauma in backpacks alongside their belongings. I attend the opening, standing in the house that rejected me, and it's filled with laughter and hope and possibility. The ghosts are still there, but they're quieter now, drowned out by new voices claiming this space as their own. Margaret's trial concludes in February. She's convicted on multiple counts: identity theft, forgery, conspiracy to commit reproductive coercion under new legislation that my foundation helped draft, and money laundering connected to Ethan Cole's sprawling investment fraud operation. She faces 15 to 20 years in prison. Ethan, betrayed by his own daughter's meticulous SEC investigation, receives 25 years for financial crimes spanning 3 decades and defrauding hundreds of investors of over $15 million. During sentencing, the judge offers Margaret the opportunity to address the court. She stands in her orange jumpsuit, diminished, but still carrying herself with that rigid dignity, and looks directly at me in the gallery. "I'm not sorry for trying to protect my family," she says, her voice steady and defiant. I'm sorry I failed at it. It's not an apology. It's a final refusal to accept responsibility, a last assertion that her crimes were justified attempts at protection rather than calculated cruelty. The judge is unmoved. The sentence stands. 3 months into her incarceration, I drive to the Women's Correctional Facility in Eastern Oregon. I don't owe her this visit, but I need it for myself, not for closure in the fairy tale sense, but for the ending that feels true, rather than satisfying. We sit across from each other in the visitation room, separated by scratched plexiglass, and I say the words I've rehearsed for months in therapy. I forgive you for being broken, I tell her. I don't forgive you for breaking me. Those are two different things. Margaret's expression doesn't change. No tears, no breakthrough moment, no dramatic realization. You turned out fine, she says flatly, as if my survival justifies her methods. I stand to leave. No, I turned out to spite you. That's the difference you'll never understand. I walk away, knowing this is the last time I'll see my mother. The closure isn't satisfying, doesn't feel like the redemptive moment movies promise. But it's real, and sometimes real is more valuable than satisfying. As I drive away from the prison highway stretching ahead toward Seattle, my phone rings. Lily's voice fills the car bright and excited. Mom Jill, guess what, I made the honor roll, all A's and 1 B in math, but Mrs. Patterson said I'm improving, and Mom Sam said we can all celebrate together, you, me, her, and Dad. Can you come over for dinner tonight? I smile, something loosening in my chest that's been tight for 20 years. Yes, I tell her. I'll be there. For the first time in 2 decades, I have a family dinner to attend that I actually want to go to. 5 years pass in the way time does when you're building something meaningful instead of running from something painful. It's 2030, and the Silent Daughters Foundation has expanded to 15 states, serving over 10,000 women annually. We have legal clinics in major cities, emergency housing partnerships, therapy programs, and a legislative team that's helped pass reproductive coercion laws in 8 states. I've written a memoir titled My Parents Ignored Me for 20 Years, and watching it climb the New York Times bestseller list feels surreal. The book sparks national conversations about family estrangement, about the myth of unconditional parental love, about what we owe to biology versus what we owe to ourselves. I've testified before Congress, twice sat across from senators and representatives who want to understand how to protect bodily autonomy while respecting family privacy. Aurora Estates has grown to $200 million in value, but I donate 60% of annual profits to the foundation now. Money stops mattering when you have enough of it, and what I need isn't another zero in my bank account. Time magazine puts me on their 100 most influential people list, and the write-up talks about transforming personal trauma into systemic change. But the success that matters most is smaller, more intimate. Lily, now 15 years old, volunteers at the House of Second Chances every summer, mentoring younger girls who are navigating the same questions about belonging and worth that she's spent her life learning to answer. She has a wisdom that shouldn't be possible at 15, born from living through complexity that would break most adults. She splits her time between 2 homes. Now 2 mothers, 2 versions of family that somehow coexist. She spends school weeks in Ashford at Samantha's modest house, staying rooted in the community where she's built friendships and routines. Weekends and summers she comes to Seattle, to my penthouse, exploring museums and theaters, and the wider world that exists beyond small-town Oregon. She calls us Mom Sam and Mom Jill without confusion or resentment, navigating our unconventional family structure with a grace that humbles me. For her 15th birthday, she asks both of us to attend her school's mother-daughter tea, and when the administrator calls suggesting that perhaps one mother would be more appropriate, Lily delivers an impromptu speech about modern families, about love not being limited by traditional structures, about how her 2 mothers give her twice the wisdom and twice the support. Someone records it, posts it online, and it goes viral. The comments are full of teenagers sharing their own complex family situations, grateful to see someone like them represented. She's writing college application essays now, and she shows me drafts about how broken people can build beautiful things if they're willing to heal. She wants to study social work, wants to do what I do, but with formal training and credentials. Both Samantha and I couldn't be prouder. Samantha has been sober for 5 years, working as a counselor at a domestic violence shelter in Portland. She helps women recognize the patterns of emotional manipulation that she learned from Margaret, using her own story to give others permission to leave. She and Ryan divorced 2 years ago, acknowledging finally that their marriage was built on obligation and guilt rather than love. It was amicable, almost relieved, both of them grateful to stop pretending. Ryan runs a construction company now that partners with the House of Second Chances, renovating properties into safe housing at cost. He and I have developed a cautious friendship, co-parenting Lily with mutual respect and careful boundaries. We'll never have what we had at 17 that's gone burned away by Margaret's manipulation. But we've built something else. Something honest. We were kids when your mother broke us. He tells me one afternoon while we're watching Lily play soccer. But we don't have to stay broken. It's not a Hollywood ending where first loves reunite and everything is magically healed. It's something better, honest, complicated, real. We're 3 broken people who've learned to be whole separately, and that's enough. On Christmas Eve 2030, I'm in my Seattle penthouse preparing for dinner at Samantha's house when a package arrives. No return address, just my name and building number in handwriting I recognize. Inside is the family portrait from 2004, the one that hung in the Scott Estate living room with my face cut out. Except it's been professionally restored, my image photoshopped back into place. In the photo, I'm 17, standing between my parents, my smile genuine because I didn't know yet what was coming. There's a note tucked into the frame written in Samantha's careful script. You were always supposed to be in this picture. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. I hold the restored portrait for a long moment, staring at my 17-year-old face looking back at me from the past, and then I carefully set it on the shelf beside Lily's drawing of 3 women holding hands. 2 versions of family separated by decades of pain, finally coexisting in the same space. Christmas morning 2030 arrives cold and clear. I wake early in my Seattle penthouse, but I don't stay there. Instead, I drive to Ashford to the House of Second Chances, where I've volunteered to help cook Christmas breakfast for the residents. It's become my tradition over the past 5 years, this choice to spend Christmas morning not in isolation or obligation, but in service to women who remind me of who I once was. 23 young women between 18 and 24 fill the renovated dining room that was once Margaret's formal parlor, where she hosted dinner parties to impress people who never really knew her. Now it's bright and warm, decorated with handmade ornaments and string lights, filled with laughter instead of performance. Lily is already there, having stayed overnight to help with decorations, wearing an apron that says Chief Cookie Officer that one of the residents gave her last year. We cooked together in the industrial kitchen that replaced Margaret's showpiece pancakes, scrambled eggs, fresh fruit bacon that fills the house with the smell of normal family mornings. When breakfast is served and everyone gathers around the long communal table, one of the residents, a girl named Maria who arrived 3 months ago after her parents threw her out for being gay, asks if I'll say a few words. I'm not prepared, have no speech rehearsed, but I stand at the head of the table and speak from the heart. 5 years ago, I stood in this house feeling like I'd lost everything. I say, looking around at faces that are learning what I learned, that survival is possible, that you can build yourself from ruins. Today, I'm standing here knowing I found everything that actually matters. You don't need blood to make a family. You need choice. You need people who show up, who do the work, who choose you every day. That's what we're building here. That's what you all deserve. After breakfast, I walk out to my car to drive back to Seattle for dinner at Samantha's house, and I find a letter tucked under my windshield wiper. It's been forwarded from my office, sent from Oregon Women's Correctional Facility. Margaret's handwriting on the envelope, shakier now than it was 5 years ago. My first instinct is to throw it away unopened, to refuse her one more attempt at contact. But Lily has followed me out, and she says quietly, maybe she finally has something real to say. I open it. The letter is brief. Margaret's elegant script barely recognizable, compromised by age and confinement, and whatever her years in prison have done to her hands. I've had 5 years to think about what I did. I still don't know if I'd choose differently. I'm too broken to know what love looks like without fear. But I know this, you deserved better than me. Thank you for coming home anyway. It's not an apology. It's not the dramatic breakthrough that would make a satisfying ending to a movie. But it's acknowledgement, and maybe that's all broken people can offer each other. Maybe that's enough. Lily is in the passenger seat as I drive back to Seattle, and she's talking about her college plans, about Stanford's social work program, about a boy named Marcus, who asked her to winter formal. Normal teenage concerns that feel extraordinary because I get to be part of them because I'm building memories instead of running from them. When we arrive at my penthouse, Samantha and Ryan are already there, setting the table together with the easy cooperation of people who've learned to be friends after being too many other things. We have Christmas dinner together, this unconventional family we've built from the ruins of trauma and violation and 25 years of separation. I look around the table at faces that represent choice, not obligation. Lily laughing at something Ryan said. Samantha pouring wine with steady hands that have been sober for 5 years. The empty chair where my parents used to sit, no longer haunting me with their absence. I think about Margaret in her prison cell, about my father in his grave, about the childhood I lost and can never recover. And then I let it go. Not because they deserved forgiveness, but because I deserve peace. Later that night, after everyone has left, I stand at my floor-to-ceiling windows watching Seattle's lights blend with falling snow. The same snow that fell 25 years ago when I was 17, standing outside that house with 2 suitcases and nowhere to go. My phone buzzes. A text from Lily. Thank you for being the kind of mom who chose me back. I smile at my reflection in the glass, and I don't see that wounded girl anymore. I see a woman who survived, who built an empire, who broke a cycle that could have continued for generations. I whisper to my reflection, to the ghost of my younger self, to anyone listening. Sometimes the richest gift isn't money, revenge, or even justice. It's peace. And I finally have it. The snow falls silently outside, covering the city in white, a blank page, a new beginning, proof that even the coldest winters eventually end. Since you confirmed with one, I will write the conclusion in English to match the rest of the story. Pumped. 3 months after that Christmas dinner, I receive word that Margaret has died in prison. A stroke sudden and complete, ending her story in the same way it diminished my father's final years. I'm notified as next of kin, asked about funeral arrangements, asked if I want to claim the body. I sit with these questions for 3 days before deciding that some endings don't require my participation. I authorize a simple cremation, no service, and I don't attend. Lily asks if I'm okay, and I tell her the truth. I feel nothing, and that's its own kind of peace. The foundation continues to grow. We open our 20th location in Boston, and the waiting list for services stretches 6 months long. Every week, I read letters from women who tell me that finding our resources saved their lives, that knowing they weren't alone in being discarded by family gave them permission to build new ones. These letters matter more than any business award I've ever received, more than any magazine cover or bestseller list placement. They're proof that pain transformed into purpose can ripple outward in ways we never anticipate. Lily graduates high school with honors and chooses Stanford's social work program, surprising no one. At her graduation party, both her mothers sit together in the front row, and when they call her name, we both stand and cheer. Samantha reaches for my hand without thinking, squeezes it once, and I squeeze back. It's not forgiveness exactly, but it's something better, recognition that we're both doing the best we can with the damage we inherited. Ryan remarries a kind woman named Patricia, who works as a nurse and accepts our complicated family structure with grace. At their small wedding, Lily serves as maid of honor, and I sit beside Samantha in the audience, and we're both genuinely happy for him. Love doesn't always look like we expect it to, but that doesn't make it less real. The Scott estate, now called the House of Second Chances, celebrates its 5th anniversary. Over 200 women have lived there, learned there, healed there. Some have gone on to college, some to careers, some simply to lives where they're not afraid anymore. The house that once held so many secrets now holds hope instead. And I think my father would have appreciated the irony, even if Margaret never could. If you've stayed with me through this entire journey, through 25 years of pain and rebuilding and complicated reconciliation, thank you. Stories like mine don't have simple endings because real life doesn't offer them. We don't get neat resolutions where everyone apologizes and all wounds heal cleanly. What we get, if we're lucky and we work hard, and we refuse to let our damage define us, is the chance to build something new from something broken. I want to hear from you. Have you experienced family estrangement? Have you rebuilt relationships that seemed irreparable, or have you found peace in walking away? Do you believe in forgiveness, or do you think some betrayals are too deep to reconcile? Your stories matter. Your experiences matter. Share them in the comments below. Not just for me, but for everyone else who needs to know they're not alone in carrying complicated family histories. If this story resonated with you, if you see yourself in any part of this journey, please subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss future stories about resilience, about breaking cycles, about the messy, beautiful work of becoming whole after being broken. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that survival is possible, that you can build an empire from nothing, that being discarded doesn't mean you're disposable. What would you have done in my position? Would you have exposed your family publicly or handled it privately? Do you think I should have fought harder for full custody of Lily, or was the shared arrangement the right choice? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and your perspectives help me understand my own story better. This isn't just my story anymore, it's ours. Every person who's ever stood in the metaphorical snow wondering why they weren't enough. Every daughter or son who's had to build themselves from ruins, every survivor who chose to transform pain into purpose instead of letting it consume them. This story belongs to all of us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. And remember, the richest gift isn't money, revenge, or even justice. It's peace. And you deserve it too.